the oceans some 20 million years ago. For 13 million years, this 60-ton beast dominated the warm waters of our planet. Though, some believe that the Meg still lives in the most remote and deepest parts of the ocean. It's a hot summer day. It seems only logical to go for a swim in the sea. You're floating on your back, completely relaxed. Your eyes are closed. Your breath is even. Water's pleasantly cool around your body. A light breeze touches your face. You feel calm enough to doze off. Suddenly, something bumps into your leg. Yanked out of your half-slumber, you begin to flail until you're face to face with the invisible danger. Luckily, all you spot is a couple of easily recognizable fins and cute smiley snouts. Phew, just dolphins. Guess you're lucky to meet them in the wild. These amazing creatures are so close, you can touch them. You've heard people say dolphins' skin feels rubbery, but to your mind, it's more like the inner part of a hard-boiled egg. One of the animals is so close to you that its salty smell fills your nostrils. You know, though, that dolphins don't have sweat glands. It means they don't sweat and are pretty much odorless. The smell you sense comes from the water they swim in. The largest and most ferocious predator to ever haunt the oceans, the Megalodon shark dominated the seas for centuries before coming extinct millions of years ago. However, scientists managed to discover very few remnants of the giant shark. Everything we know about the great beast we've learned thanks to fossils of its giant teeth, which are just about the size of the average human hand. A Megalodon skeleton has never been discovered. Shark skeletons are made mostly of cartilage, meaning that they decompose quickly. Luckily, sharks continuously shed and regrow teeth throughout their lives. One shark can go through 40,000 teeth in a single lifetime. Scientists have managed to study different types of shark species based on their teeth alone. The Megalodon shark had around 276 teeth. When they fell out, those teeth landed in the seabed where they stayed for millions of years, fossilizing. Scientists found those teeth, and they're the only real record we have of the Megalodon's existence. Megalodon teeth have been discovered all over the world. It means that unlike other marine animals of its time, the Megalodon was intercontinental. Even today, most sharks and marine animals tend to stick to one sea or ocean. The Megalodon shark swam freely around the world, moving between tropical and subtropical waters. Megalodon teeth have been found in every continent apart from the freezing cold waters of Antarctica. When a Megalodon makes a starring appearance in a movie or TV show, it's portrayed to look like a giant version of a great white shark. Scientists previously believed that the Megalodon and the great white shark both descended from one common ancestor. Still, it's not true. In fact, it's more likely that the Megalodon was the arch-enemy of the great white shark's ancestor, the broad-toothed mako shark. That means Megalodon wouldn't have looked so similar to the great white after all. In reality, the Megalodon would have a shorter nose than the great white, along with longer pectoral fins to give the giant shark a stockier and more threatening build. They both had an excellent sense of smell though, so even in prehistoric times, it wasn't a good idea to go swimming with a chunk of raw meat in hand. And it certainly isn't safe now. Whether the Meg's hiding somewhere in the depths, which some still believe is true, or it's gone forever, younger cousins will still be there waiting. Also, both of them like to go after big marine mammals, so they would certainly have things to do together. That is, until the Meg got moody and accidentally ate its friend. You never know. These guys had a different hunting style. Great whites prefer to dive straight towards their prey and find its softest spot, like exposed legs or underbelly. Sometimes, an entire tooth would be found embedded in a bone of some bigger animal, such as a whale. Without the main parts they use for swimming, poor sea animals were then helpless and unable to escape. Yet whales were just a smaller part of Megalodon's diet. Seals, sea cows, squids, dolphins, other sharks. The good old Meg probably wouldn't say no to some random school of smaller fish swimming into its mouth either. Nothing better than a good snack after a big tasty dinner. Even those giant turtles weren't safe with their thick shells. The Meg probably took them as a dare challenge on a daily basis. Scientists have used computer simulations to try and work out the hunting style of the ancient shark. Using this technology, scientists have discovered that the Megalodon's attack style was very different from that of modern-day sharks. Modern sharks dive straight for their prey's most vulnerable spot, For example, the soft underbelly of a seal. The Megalodon's teeth were uniquely suited to biting through tougher areas of cartilage. So, evidence suggests that a Megalodon would first chew the tougher fins of their prey, rendering them unable to swim away before launching into their final attack. Some people believe that the Megalodon is still alive today, lurking at the depths of the ocean's waters, but it's unlikely to be true. Megalodons are a warm water species, which means they would be unable to survive in the cold waters of the deep ocean. Most of the Megalodon's potential prey live in shallower waters, meaning there would be very little for the Megalodon to eat at deep sea level. Simply put, if there was an animal as big as the Megalodon still living today, we would have spotted it by now. It is unlikely that you'll run into a Meg though. The sharks, like us, preferred warm coastal waters. Deep ocean living would be too cold for the beasts, and food would be scarce. Their entire bodies would also have to evolve to avoid being squished by the enormous water pressure down there. It's unlikely they're still around, but not impossible. Some good news if you do run into one is that the shark is pretty unlikely to eat you. You are way too small a meal for the Megalodon, even if you have a couple of friends with you. This guy eats whales that are over 50 feet long. If you're having a beach party though, it's a different story. In a beach full of swimmers, the shark very well might creep up, scooping several humans into its giant mouth without even chewing. The fearsome name Megalodon comes from two Greek words, megas, meaning big, and odont, meaning tooth. Combined, they mean big tooth, and it certainly lives up to its name. Just one of its chompers is the same size as a human head. It had 276 humongous teeth in total, across 5 terrifying rows. In all of history, only a couple of saber-toothed cats and the T-Rex had consistently bigger teeth. Now that's a showdown I'd like to watch. The Megalodon vanished millions of years ago, leaving only huge teeth to be found by modern archaeologists. They literally disappeared with very few traces left. Scientists believe that over time, deep sea levels dropped and the ocean's temperature went down rapidly. Over a third of all marine life was wiped out as the oceans cooled and the number of animals at the bottom of the food chain plummeted. This had a catastrophic effect on the hungry predators at the top. Sorry guys. It became way too cold for these sun-loving sharks too, which made it difficult for them to reproduce since they gave birth in warm waters. The Megalodon is usually described as a sort of great white shark, but this is just a common myth. In fact, the ancestors of today's great white existed at the same time as the Meg, but they weren't best buddies and were even in competition with each other. The great white shark was a better hunter using its smaller size and agility to snap up the Meg's prey quickly. They were also known to eat Meg pups, who were only half their size. This didn't exactly help the whole extinction thing. While a great white was no match for an adult Meg in a head-to-head fight, they sure weren't scared of stealing their food. This only left the bigger fish and whales for the Meg, but its food supplies began to run out as whales swam to the cooler new seas. The whales adapted to prefer the colder temperatures, leaving our friend the Meg behind. The Megalodons either starved or were frozen into extinction by the Ice Age. Rather than a great white, the Megalodon is more like a modern bull shark. It had a short snout, a flat lower jaw, and huge pectoral fins to support its massive weight and size. As scary as they are, these sharks were actually caring family guys. Several Megalodon nursery areas have been discovered in Florida, Maryland, and Panama. They gave birth to their young in shallow water environments. We know this from discovering loads of tiny Megalodon teeth found in these areas. I wonder if they had nannies too.
The ocean is one of the most incredible places on Earth. It's not only beautiful, but also dangerous. We all know about sharks, huge octopuses, heavy storms, and the Bermuda Triangle. But there's something more terrifying and more dangerous than all of these things. I'm talking about rogue waves. The 4-passenger yacht Mignonette is sailing through the Cape of Good Hope in southern Africa. A storm blows through, but the yacht successfully survives it. By evening, the wind has completely subsided. The sea is calm. The team, tired after the storm, is going to rest. At this moment, seemingly out of nowhere, a 39-foot wave appears and crashes over the yacht with terrifying force. The yacht succumbs and sinks. Thankfully, the passengers escape in a lifeboat. For the next 24 days, they drift on the open sea until they're picked up by a passing ship. No one believed the stories of the surviving passengers about a huge wave. This story isn't a plot from a thriller movie, but a real event that occurred on July 5, 1884. Now imagine that you're sailing on a modern yacht in the open sea. The sun is shining brightly. There's not a single cloud. The sea is crystal clear and calm. What could be better than a vacation like this? Suddenly, you hear a very loud hum. In 2 to 3 seconds, a huge 33-foot wave appears from the calm surface of the sea and crashes into your yacht. Fortunately, the ship manages to stay afloat, and the wave disappears as suddenly as it appeared. This is also a real case that happened to the owner of the Calaran yacht on June 17, 2018. These waves have different names: white, rogue, wandering, monster. The French call them a bad joke. Unfortunately, there's nothing to laugh at. A meeting with such a wave usually ends with a sunken ship. Sirens, sea monsters, the anger of Poseidon. This is how people explain the appearance of massive waves in ancient times. Christopher Columbus was the first to write a note about a rogue wave as a natural phenomenon. In August 1498, his team explored the shores of West India, later America, when suddenly all of the crew members heard a deafening roar, and then a towering 88-foot wave appeared out of nowhere. Fortunately, the wave passed by, and Columbus went on his way. After that, a lot of reports were recorded about this phenomenon, but no one believed the sailors. Mermaids, kraken, and now monster waves? Come on, guys! This is the typical reaction to anyone claiming to have witnessed the nightmarish waves. Even when a 74-foot rogue wave suddenly fell on the British liner Queen Mary in 1942, the 15,000 people who lived to tell the tale were rarely taken seriously. Only in 1995 was the rogue wave officially recorded with special instruments. That day, an 85-foot wave hit the Norwegian gas platform Doppner. In order to study the nature of these waves, in 2000, the European Union created an international project called MaxWave. As part of this project, scientists launched 2 satellites to monitor the world's oceans. However, they ended up with more questions than answers. There's a special wave theory, according to which the larger the wave, the less likely it is to occur. MaxWave satellites managed to record waves up to 82 feet. But here's the most interesting part. Such a wave should only appear every 200 years. But satellites discovered 10 monster waves in the first 3 weeks of operation. 19 years have passed since then, and we still know very little about it. The worst thing is that scientists have no ideas about how to predict the appearance of these waves in advance. Modern radars and sonars have recorded the proportions of these waves. Their height reaches from 39 to 164 feet. Their speed can reach 62 miles per hour, and their life expectancy is from 20 seconds to 2 minutes. Although information is scarce, scientists have managed to divide these waves into 3 types. The first type is the classic white wave. It appears not only in a storm, but also in a calm sea. After an unexpected appearance, it also suddenly dissolves into the water and leaves no residue. The second type is Three Sisters, and you guessed it, these are 3 consecutive waves, one of which is more massive than the others. Even a huge supertanker could break under the weight if caught in such waves. The third type is Wave Monster. Of all 3 types, this wave is the most dangerous and unpredictable. Imagine a 15-story building. The spectacle is certainly amazing, but I wouldn't want to see it in real life. Anyway, you can watch a lot of videos with rogue waves on YouTube, but after you watch our video. But what provokes these lonely waves? No one knows for sure. Perhaps rogue waves are of the same nature as tsunamis? Well, not at all. Tsunamis occur as a result of underwater earthquakes and grow as they draw closer to the coast. Some believe that they appear when the surface sea current encounters a strong headwind. Others are sure that the waves are born from the collision of warm and cold currents. Still others are convinced that it happens because of gravitational anomalies, when gravity sharply decreases or increases. There's also the theory of wave interference, small waves combining to form one big one, just like a snowball. But the most interesting theory is that waves form due to kinetic vampirism. Insert Dracula joke here. According to this version, under certain natural conditions, waves acquire the ability to exchange kinetic energy. And among all the waves, there will be one vampire wave, which will absorb the energy of the others. After accumulating enough energy, the vampire wave splashes it out. This theory explains the impact force and its sudden disappearance. Some oceanographers believe that rogue waves are to blame for the disappearance of ships in the most mysterious place in the Atlantic Ocean, the Bermuda Triangle. And while it's likely that rogue waves periodically appear there, it's impossible to consider them the main solution to the mysteries of the triangle. Besides ships, planes disappear there, and it's unlikely that the waves can reach them. Adding even more mystery to the phenomenon, these waves appear not only in the seas and oceans, but also in lakes. They were recorded numerous times in the Great Lakes. In Lake Superior, the largest of all the Great Lakes, the appearance of the Three Sisters has been recorded several times. In addition to rogue waves, sailors have told about a more terrible phenomenon, sea hollows. Imagine that this is a very big wave, but just the opposite. It goes under the water, forming a large dip in the sea. But unlike waves, such hollows have never been officially recorded. Rogue waves can be dangerous in a similar way by forming sea holes in the water. When the wave builds up, it draws in all the water around it, so near the base, these holes can be very deep. If the bow or stern of a ship ends up in one, the ship can instantly sink. I think the Jaws movie should be replaced by a new film, Waves. Who cares about sharks now, when at any moment a wave the size of a skyscraper could come rushing towards you? Hey, anybody remember the movie The Poseidon Adventure? That was a rogue wave that capsized the ocean liner. There are no ways to anticipate rogue waves, but you can significantly reduce the risk of meeting one. Study the history and meteorological records of the area you want to visit. Most often, rogue waves are found off the east coast of Africa in the Indian Ocean and in the North Atlantic. By the way, it was there in 1985 at the Fastnet Rock Lighthouse that the highest wave ever recorded was captured. Its height reached 157 feet. If rogue waves don't scare you and you're determined to set sail, then watch for weather changes and, most importantly, look often at the horizon. Single waves can appear in the distance, so you have a chance to evade them. And if one narrowly misses sinking your boat, well, as it goes by, be sure to wave.
A wanderer walking through a desert feels the scorching sun like never before. You can see him from afar thanks to his shining clothes. His long hoodie is covered with foil. It reflects sunlight and protects him from heat. The ground is so hot that shoe soles can melt on it. That's why the wanderer's boots are covered with heat-resistant material. A cloudless sky, barren land, and heat. But the wanderer is not in the desert. He's walking on the ocean's bottom. He doesn't know why this happened, but all the oceans on Earth dried up. It happened almost instantly, and even the greatest minds in the world don't know why. The wanderer knows only one thing. When it happened, his family was on the other side of the ocean. For several months, he's been traveling across this lifeless land, and he won't stop until he finds his family. The landscape around is spectacular. People have finally found out the secrets of the ocean depths. The seabed consists of huge mountain ranges and volcanoes. They fell asleep forever after the water had disappeared. Also, there are huge trenches leading to the unexplored depths of the planet. People had to build bridges to get over these enormous cracks in the ground. But most of the ocean floor is flat plains, boundless, lifeless, merciless. The wanderer's walking across a huge canyon. Once, it was swarming with sea life. The man puts on a gas mask, but not because of a sandstorm. Many fish and other marine inhabitants used to live in such canyons. Now, all that's left is a terrible smell. The wanderer passes by huge skeletons of whales. Among them, he notices dirty tents. People are hiding there from heat. The temperature in the area is much higher than in the Sahara Desert. One of the main functions of the ocean was to distribute heat all over the planet. The sun emits heat and radiation. The ocean absorbed this energy. Lots of currents were warm, and they carried this warmth around the world. The water got heated at the equator, then it evaporated and turned into clouds. When warm air rose, it pulled along colder air from below. This allowed the energy to be evenly distributed. In simple words, the ocean cooled hot places and brought warmth to cold ones. Now there's none of this. Every day the sun burns the equator and dries up the rest of the planet. The wanderer doesn't come close to the tents. He is carrying the most valuable treasure in the world and doesn't want people to notice him. The inhabitants of Earth are just trying to survive, and many have forgotten about such a thing as morality. Fortunately, the wanderer still remembers. The thoughts of the family help him remain a good person. Sometimes it complicates his life. Like now, for example. In the distance, he sees a young girl. She doesn't look well. There's no one around, and the wanderer decides to help her. Out of his backpack, he pulls a thing worth more than all the gold on the planet, a bottle of water. The girl takes a few sips, but instead of thanking the wanderer, she starts screaming. It's a trap. Her accomplices appear from different sides. Looters. They're gonna take everything. The wanderer runs away. He hasn't eaten for several days, and his strength is leaving him. He won't be able to keep going much longer. The marauders are closing in on him. The wanderer throws the bottle aside. His pursuers rush to the water like crazy. They forget about the man and fight one another for the bottle. The chances of the wanderer's survival have greatly decreased. He could make this bottle last at least several days. Plus, he's also lost a lot of fluid because of running. In the beginning, there was no panic because of a lack of water. The ocean dried up, but its waters were salty anyway. People still had seas, lakes, and rivers. But the problem was that the ocean was feeding them. When the ocean water evaporated, it formed clouds. These clouds moved all over the world and enriched lakes and rivers with rain. Now, there are almost no clouds. The sun started heating Earth much more. Lakes and seas dried up alarmingly quickly. At that moment, real chaos began. The sun is going down on the horizon. Sunset is near. It's not so hot anymore. The exhausted wanderer continues walking. In the distance, he notices something that makes him stop, take out a small shovel, and start digging quickly. There's no shelter around, just a flat plain. The wanderer speeds up, otherwise it might be too late. The pit is finally ready. The man jumps down and covers his head with a cloak. A few seconds later, a strong ash storm passes through the entire plain. The smallest particles of ash can penetrate through clothes and get into the lungs. The wind is so strong that it can knock anyone down. When the oceans dried up, the sun began to burn the surface of the planet. This led to massive forest fires. The flames destroyed almost all the trees. Huge clouds of carbon dioxide and ash formed. Driven by the wind, they travel the world and poison everything around. The wanderer is sitting in the pit while a terrible hurricane is sweeping over his head. He thinks of his family and slowly falls asleep. Cold wakes him up. Frosty air chills him to the bone. So it's night now. The wanderer climbs out of the pit and finds himself under bright stars. As soon as the water dried up, almost all clouds disappeared. Factories stopped working. Cars no longer emitted carbon dioxide. Thanks to this, comets and the most distant stars can be seen in the sky. The wanderer has seen them 1,000 times, but he's still not used to the breathtaking picture. It's like he's looking at the sky through a telescope. An icy gust of wind brings the wanderer back to reality. He won't survive the night if he doesn't find a warmer place. Before, nights were warmer thanks to the energy of the ocean. Now, as soon as the sun goes down, temperatures drop dramatically. The wanderer needs to move to stay warm. He starts walking faster. Soon, he notices some lights in the distance. It's probably other looters. The wanderer goes deeper into the valley. Stars and the moon illuminate his way. Unfortunately, he is running out of energy. He pulls a protein bar out of his pocket, but he needs at least a bit of water to eat it. To digest food, your body needs liquid. If the wanderer eats the bar, he'll only get thirstier. He can't walk and falls to the ground. He checks his pockets and finds a small kerosene tablet. He lights it using a matchstick. A tiny flame protects him from cold. To distract himself from thirst, the wanderer takes out an old MP3 player. He charged it during the day using the solar panels on his backpack. The man puts on headphones. Classical music calms him down. He lies on the ground next to the burning tablet. He needs to gain strength to continue his journey tomorrow. It's morning. In an hour, the sun will start burning the ground again. It's crucial to find water while he still has some time left. The wanderer inspects the territory and notices a spot where the ground is darker. In his previous life, the wanderer worked as a surveyor. He takes a few steps and touches the ground. It feels cool. There's an underground spring here. He begins to dig. The ground is getting wet. Water starts seeping out of the soil. The wanderer fills his empty bottles. Things don't look that bad anymore. It's getting a bit more difficult to breathe with each new day. In the past, phytoplankton and algae produced up to 70% of all the oxygen on the planet, but not anymore. Several days have passed. The wanderer runs out of water and food again. Fortunately, not for long. He's now walking among huge sunken ships. He sees modern aircraft carriers, liners, and even ancient pirate boats. In the distance, he spots huge mountains. The tops of these rocks are what used to be called the shore. The ocean floor is ending. The thoughts about reuniting with his family give him more strength. The man reaches the top and finds himself in the middle of a ruined city. It's empty. Where have all the people gone? Where is my family now? The wanderer asks himself. The man walks through the abandoned streets and meets an old man. He says that almost all the people who used to live here left the city and went to Antarctica. The wanderer has a new goal. He's going to get to the icy mainland no matter what. He will find his family.
Lions, dogs, cats, all these mammals sleep in pretty comfortable positions. But not whales. They look like giant floating loaves of bread, which is a scene one diver accidentally came across in the Caribbean Sea. 6 whales were just standing upright with their tails pointed down at a depth of about 65 feet below the surface. Scientists discovered that when sperm whales take a nap, they stay in this position for 10 to 15 minutes. They don't move or breathe. But these creatures spend only 7% of their time asleep, far less than other mammals. Usually, they either rest peacefully in the water or relax, slowly swimming next to other marine animals. When they're moving and sleeping at the same time, they're actually taking a nap. These animals can't go too deep and need to stay close to the surface. Great white sharks sleep and hunt at greater depths, which means one less thing to worry about when taking a quick nap. Plus, it gets pretty cold the deeper you go, and whales need warmer environments that can help them maintain the temperature of their large bodies. When alone, dolphins enter a stage of deep sleep. It usually happens at night and lasts for only a few hours at a time. While sleeping, the animal floats at the surface. It shuts down half of its brain, I can relate, together with the opposite eye. The other half is at a low alert level, awake and ready to react if some unwanted visitor comes closer. The part of the brain that is awake also sends signals when it's time to go up to the surface to take a breath of fresh air. Marine mammals have the blowhole. That's a flap of skin they can open and close whenever they want. People breathe automatically. Your body knows what it needs to do even when you're sleeping. But whales and dolphins have a voluntary breathing system. It means they need to consciously go to the surface to get some air. And one part of their brain needs to always be awake to inform the animal it's time to go up. Whales and dolphins can hold their breath way longer than other species. They also have a higher tolerance for carbon dioxide and can take in more air. Their red blood cells store more oxygen too. Whales and dolphins' blood goes only to those body parts that really need oxygen. If a whale only uses its brain, heart, fins, and some other muscles needed for swimming at the moment, those will also be the only body parts that will get the oxygen. Digestion or other functions can wait. The ocean is not a place where you can relax and peacefully fall asleep. While sleeping, fish reduce their activity. Their metabolism becomes slow. Some of them keep floating in the same spot. Others find a safer place among corals or in the mud. Early in life, dolphins learn to make a unique whistle that helps others from their pod to identify them. That means these specific whistles are their names, and dolphins do respond to them. Clams have feet. It looks like a large tongue that sometimes protrudes from the shell, but that's actually the foot, and it's relatively long compared to the length of the animal. Clams use this limb to dig themselves in the sand. The blue whale is the largest living animal, and it's also larger than the majority of dinosaurs used to be. They can grow to more than 100 feet long and have a weight of almost 200 tons. That's like 50 adult elephants. A blue whale's tongue alone can weigh more than one elephant. Such a giant surely needs to eat a lot, 500,000 calories in just one mouthful. The blue whale's heart is the size of a small car and weighs 1,300 pounds. To move the blood through such a giant body, the heartbeats are so strong you can hear them even from 2 miles away. The heart of a whale beats only 8 to 10 times per minute. The whale is one of the loudest creatures out there. Its call can go up to 180 decibels, which is as loud as a jet plane. Almost 95% of jellyfish's body is made of water. For comparison, the human body is 60% water. It's probably not a surprise since jellyfish don't have a heart, blood, eyes, or brain. The other 5% of their body weight is proteins, muscles, and nerve cells. Jellyfish have been around for more than 500 million years. This makes them older than dinosaurs. These creatures haven't changed much, and today's jellyfish are pretty much like their ancestors. These creatures live in the ocean, but in 1991, more than 2,000 jellyfish polyps were taken into space. Scientists wanted to see how they would react in the environment with no gravity. The jellyfish reproduced and created 60,000 new polyps, but unfortunately, those couldn't function normally after getting back to Earth. One species of jellyfish can literally live forever. As it grows older, the critter goes down to the seafloor to become a polyp again, and that polyp turns into a new jellyfish with the same genetics. Greenland sharks can live 500 years. This is an animal with almost the longest lifespan among vertebrates. Sperm whales are sociable creatures. They spend their life surrounded by their family. These animals support one another and have close friends they remember well, even if they don't see each other for a long time. Electric eels have small eyes that are not so effective in environments with no light, so they mostly rely on their electric organs. Those consist of 6,000 cells. Eels use them to stow power, similar to batteries. These creatures use electricity like bats use their radars or dolphins their sonar. An eel can also produce enough electricity to power a panel of light bulbs. There's a small tropical archer fish that can learn to recognize human faces. This fish has an interesting ability to spit small jets of water from its mouth. Researchers showed the fish the image of two different faces placed side by side. One was unknown and the other was familiar. The fish was supposed to spit water at the familiar one. The creature took the right guess more than 80% of the time. Every year in the winter, great white sharks that live along the California coastline disappear. It feels as if they take a vacation for 30 to 40 days. The animals go to a point halfway between Hawaii and Mexico. They might do it to get some food, relax, or hang out with their buddies from other areas. The spot is now called the Whale Shark Cafe. Some types of sharks, like makos, whale sharks, or white sharks, breathe in a very specific way. It requires them to swim all the time. They also need to move quickly and with their mouth open. This way, the oxygen can enter and reach their gills. Sea sponges are some of the most primitive animals. They're immobile, don't have a mouth, eyes, bones, brain, heart, lungs, or any other organ whatsoever, and still, they're alive. There's such a thing as a sea unicorn. That's an animal called the narwhal. Its horn is actually a tooth that can grow up to 10 feet long. Manatees, also known as sea cows, are distant relatives of elephants. Their weight can go up to 1,000 pounds. These creatures are vegetarian and need to eat around 10% of their total weight on a daily basis. That's lots of sea salad. In some cases, manatees share space with alligators, but they get along pretty well. You can even find a photo from Florida where an alligator rides a manatee's back. Frogfish have special fins that help these creatures walk along the sand. They're very useful in shallow waters. A ghost pipefish is hard to see, but once you spot it, you're bound to get really surprised. Its head makes up over 40% of its body. Crabs don't feel like wasting time on such formalities as putting foods in their mouth. That's why they taste it with their feet, which is where their taste buds are. Marine iguanas are the only lizards on our planet that like spending time in the ocean, even though they mainly live on land. They're herbivores that feed in shallow waters and swim like snakes. Iguanas use their long claws to hold on to the bottom when they need to graze. Green turtles can cross over 1,400 miles when migrating. They try to find the perfect spot to lay their eggs. Penguins sort of fly when they're underwater, reaching a speed of 25 miles per hour. More than 5 million years ago, I've heard, I wasn't around then, deep-sea worms and humans had a common ancestor. So we still share 70% of our genes with these creatures, and with sea stars, squid, and octopuses. The ocean covers over 70% of our planet, and over 80% of it is unexplored. More than 1 million species live there. But there are not only animals, 3 million shipwrecks are lying all over the ocean floor, hiding mysterious stories. Many of them are yet to be discovered.
Oceans cover over 70% of the Earth's surface, so it comes as no surprise that about 50% of the U.S. territory is underwater. We've explored only 5% of oceans. 12 people walked on the moon, but there were only 4 manned descents to the Mariana Trench, the deepest location on Earth. Pressure is the crucial challenge of going deep into the ocean. At bigger depths, temperatures are extremely low, visibility is zero, and the pressure is so intense, it's harder to send people to the bottom of the ocean than to send them into space. You can't see it, but the pressure of the air pushing down on your body in deeper parts is so big, it feels like more than 100 adult elephants, or 50 jumbo jets, are standing on your head. The pressure is 1,000 times bigger than on the land. Meanwhile, in space, when we pass through the Earth's atmosphere, the pressure drops to zero. We're mapping the planets, but it turns out to be easier than mapping the ocean floor. NASA uses radio waves when exploring space, but this method can't be used for the ocean, since the trillions and trillions of gallons of water get in the way. The Pacific Ocean is becoming smaller, while the Atlantic Ocean is expanding. Many, many years ago, the Atlantic Ocean wasn't even there. It was formed when the North and South American continents separated. Now it's growing bigger at a rate of 2 inches per year, while the Pacific Ocean is shrinking a bit. Oceans even have their own sound, called a bloop. Its quite loud, low frequency, and pretty spooky sound was detected by scientists back in 1997. Some years later, though, other studies revealed that the bloop emanated from an iceberg, cracking away from a glacier. There are lakes and rivers in the ocean depths. It's possible because saltwater and hydrogen sulfide make a combination that's much denser than the water surrounding it, which is why lakes and rivers might form and flow right inside the ocean. The world's biggest waterfall, called the Denmark Strait Cataract, is underwater too, in the waters between Iceland and Greenland. It's 11,500 feet tall, and its amount of water is almost 2,000 times bigger than the one Niagara Falls has. This underwater waterfall is possible because cold water is much denser than hot water, so cold water drops into the much warmer Erminger Sea. The longest mountain chain is also hidden in the mysterious underwater world. The mid-ocean ridge is almost 40,000 miles long. People studied only about 1% of this ridge. We know less of this chain than we know about the surface of Mars or Venus. Challenger Deep, the southern part of the Mariana Trench. That's a small valley at an extreme depth of a little bit over 36,000 feet. Imagine putting our tallest mountain, Mount Everest, into the Challenger Deep. 1.2 miles would still remain for the mountain's peak to reach the surface of the water. 94% of all living creatures are aquatic, and almost 2/3 of marine life is still not defined. So new species are being discovered all the time, including those spooky ones like the Goblin shark, the fangtooth, and the frilled shark. Imagine what more's been waiting for us down there. There are also treasures hidden down below. Oceans have around 20 million tons of gold, but not in a way it can be extracted or mined with any cost-effective methods. It's dispersed all over the seafloor. If we could take it out, each person on the planet would get about 9 pounds of gold. Corals in shallow waters needed to find a way to protect themselves from the sunlight, so they developed some kind of layer that helps them feel good, even when exposed to direct sun rays. Basically, they developed a sort of natural sunscreen. Corals are living creatures. No mouth, eyes, or anything else that could say they're more than a rock, but they are in the category of marine invertebrates. A lot of the oxygen on our planet comes from the ocean. Scientists claim it's about 50 to 80%. The oxygen is produced by marine plants, mostly algae. A tsunami can be up to 100 feet tall, but waves under the surface are even bigger and can reach a height of 800 feet before they collapse. Antarctic fish have proteins inside their bodies that act as some sort of natural antifreeze. These proteins attach to ice crystals and prevent fish from freezing when the water gets too cold. When you place a seashell near your ear, it seems like you hear the sound of waves crashing on some distant beach, like a shell's memories are trapped inside. In reality, the shell amplifies the ambient noise from your current surrounding. There are 1 million volcanoes in the ocean depths, and 80% of eruptions happen underwater. The jellyfish is one of the oldest aquatic creatures, and their ancestors lived 500 to 700 million years ago. That makes them more than twice as old as the first dinosaurs, since they appeared around 240 million years ago. Sharks have also been around for quite a long time, about 400 million years. Fun fact, they don't have bones, but cartilage, the same thing our nose and ears are made of. Their skin is covered in a material that looks more like some sort of teeth than fish scales, dermal denticles. With this, their skin kind of feels like sandpaper, so it helps them be quicker and quieter. The smallest shark, called a dwarf lantern shark, is also one of the tiniest fish in the ocean, since the biggest one ever found was smaller than 8 inches. Lobsters have been around for almost 500 million years. Scientists found fossils of some kind of a huge 7-foot-long lobster, which was one of the biggest animals living at those times. Dolphins are some kind of sleepwalkers, since they sleep with only half of their brain. They close one eye at a time. Sea turtles are quite adaptive animals, and they live on all the continents, except Antarctica. Octopi are incredible marine dwellers. They have blue blood, 3 hearts, and 9 brains. The central one and the other 8 brains are distributed among their 8 arms. They also can regrow an arm in about 100 days. Sea sponges don't have a head, eyes, a mouth, bones, lungs, a heart, or a brain, but they're still living beings. A seahorse is technically a fish, even though it doesn't look like one. This specific animal has no stomach or teeth. Food goes through its digestive systems really fast, so these animals must eat more or less all the time to stay alive. Seahorses can eat more than 3,000 brine shrimp per day. There's a unique spot in the Pacific Ocean where you're farther from all your problems than in any other place on Earth. It's called Point Nemo, and it's about 1,500 miles away from the closest points of land. It's quite hard to get there. First, it's not a bit of land, so you can't actually see it. Second, even the person who discovered it back in 1992 never visited it. The ocean doesn't get struck by lightning as often as the land does, but when this happens, the results can be way worse than on the ground, since water is conductive, so lightning spreads across the ocean really fast. Cold water surrounding your body while swimming may feel refreshing, but that's not a protective layer, and you can still get sunburned. In fact, the water only reflects 10% of UV rays, while the sand reflects an additional 15% of the sun's rays. The temperature in oceans varies. Sometimes you can find water with a temperature of up to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, while there are hydrothermal vents in the seafloor too. They release water that goes up to 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Ouch. There's this thing called the Milky Sea phenomenon, a stunning scene where the water glows with such incredible light that it looks like it's not from our planet. This area is so big, you can see it shining from space, and the mysterious phenomenon usually can be seen in the Indian Ocean. Sometimes, while chilling on a beach, you can see green flashes over the horizon. That happens because the atmosphere bends sunlight when it's passing through, after which it separates the light into different colors. This is in the same way a prism splits the light into what we later see as small rainbows. Black holes have incredibly strong gravitational force pulling objects in. Even light doesn't have a chance to escape it. A similar thing happens with those found in the oceans. Yes, no need to go to space to see one of those. We have them on Earth too. It's just that they don't catch the light, but the water. They are enormous whirlpools, sometimes bigger than whole cities, and they're spinning against the main current, swirling billions of tons of water and everything else on the way.
Today, I'm going to tell you about creatures that had unique features which allowed them to grow to incredible sizes. They were some of the most impressive animals to have ever existed on our planet. The Argentinosaurus is a genus of sauropod dinosaurs that lived approximately 97 million years ago in what is now South America. Scientists think it was one of the largest land animals ever, with a length of up to 100 feet and a weight of up to 100 tons. A farmer stumbled upon a giant leg bone while tending his cattle. That's how he discovered the first fossils of the Argentinosaurus in Argentina in 1987. Further excavations uncovered more bones, revealing a massive dinosaur that would have dwarfed most other animals of its time. The Spinosaurus, meaning spine lizard, is a genus of theropod dinosaur that lived around 97 million years ago in what is now North Africa. It is believed to be one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs to ever exist, with a length of up to 60 feet and a weight of up to 23 tons. The Spinosaurus is known for its distinctive elongated sail-like structure on its back. It was likely used for thermoregulation. It also had long crocodile-like jaws that were lined with sharp teeth. This allowed the creature to catch and eat large prey, such as fish, crocodiles, and other dinosaurs. The first fossils of the Spinosaurus were discovered in Egypt in 1912. The sperm whale, Physeter macrocephalus, is a species of toothed whale that is the largest toothed predator on Earth. It also has the largest brain of any animal species. It is found in oceans all over the world and can dive to depths of up to 7,000 feet in search of food. You can easily recognize sperm whales by their massive, block-shaped heads, which can measure up to 1/3 of their total body length. They have dark brown or grayish-blue skin and a distinctive wrinkled appearance. The Titanoboa is an extinct genus of a giant snake that lived approximately 58 million years ago. It is considered to be the largest known snake ever. It could grow up to 42 feet and weighed around 2,500 pounds. The first fossils of the Titanoboa were discovered in a coal mine in Colombia in 2004. This discovery meant a lot because it provided insights into the size and behavior of snakes during the Paleocene era, as well as the overall climate and ecosystem of the time. The blue whale, Balænoptera musculus, is the largest animal on Earth, measuring up to 100 feet in length and weighing as much as 200 tons. These marine mammals are found in oceans all over the world and can live up to 90 years. Blue whales have a long, streamlined body that is usually blue-gray in color with mottled patterns. They have a small dorsal fin and 2 pectoral fins that are about 1/3 the length of their body. Blue whales feed on tiny shrimp-like creatures called krill, and they eat a lot. A single adult blue whale can eat up to 8,000 pounds of krill in a day. The Leadsichthus is an extinct genus of large, bony fish that lived during the Jurassic period, approximately 155 million years ago. It is believed to be one of the largest fish that have ever lived. Some estimates suggest that it could grow up to 55 feet in length. The first fossils of Leedsichthys were discovered in England in the 19th century, and more recent discoveries have been made in other parts of Europe, South America, and Africa. Despite its enormous size, the Leedsichthys was a filter feeder, similar to modern-day whale sharks, and likely fed on plankton and other small organisms. The creature did it by simply swimming with its enormous mouth open, filtering water through its gills. The pterodostro is an extinct species of flamingo-like birds that lived approximately 35 million years ago. They were relatively small birds with a wingspan of about 2-3 feet. And they were known for their distinctive long, narrow beaks equipped with comb-like structures used for filter feeding. The pterodostro lived in shallow bodies of water, like lakes and lagoons, and mostly fed on small crustaceans and other tiny organisms. The animal filtered them from the water using the comb-like structures on the inside of its beak while swimming through the water. The African elephant is the largest land animal on Earth and one of the most recognizable ones. There are two species of the African elephant, the savanna elephant, Loxodonta africana, and the forest elephant, Loxodonta cyclotis. You can see them in various parts of sub-Saharan Africa. These creatures can be identified by their large size, gray skin, and long trunks. African elephants can grow up to 13 feet tall and weigh up to 14,000 pounds, depending on the species and gender.
The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the Bermuda Triangle mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night, when he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. No one exactly knows how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. When the TBF Avenger planes went missing, a massive search operation was conducted. Boats and planes searched the Bermuda Triangle for any signs of the aircraft. One of the boats searching was a PBM-5 Mariner airboat. The airboat took flight at 7:27 p.m. and called in a routine radio message 3 minutes later. Then, it was never heard from again. No trace was ever found of the rescue airboat or the 5 Avenger aircraft. A huge investigation was launched into the disappearance of all these vehicles, but nothing was ever discovered. The Bermuda Triangle is home to some pretty intense and unexpected weather. Storms build up quickly and unexpectedly, then disappear soon after. If you blink, you might miss it. This could explain why few distress signals are issued. Pilots and sailors never saw the weather coming. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for the many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large unexpected waves that reach up to 100 feet tall. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. Just off the coast of Japan, you'll find the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific Ocean. They call it the Devil's Triangle. Between 1950 and 1954, 9 ships disappeared in this area without leaving a trace. The ship Kaio Maroon 5 was sent to investigate these unexplained disappearances when it also vanished. After this incident, the Japanese authorities labeled the area as a danger zone, and sailors were encouraged to avoid it. Some people blame all disasters on the extraterrestrial paranormal activity. Others suppose it's all about raging natural phenomena. Some scientists believe the cause of anomalies is the environmental changes. Also, there's a really high concentration of methane hydrates on the bottom of the ocean in the Pacific Bermuda area. This gas tends to set off, and when it happens, bubbles start forming on the surface of the water. These gas eruptions can interrupt the ability to float and can easily sink a ship. Because of this chemical reaction, there won't be even a trace left. Underwater volcanoes are said to be another possible explanation for the Japanese Dragon's Triangle. In fact, they can take down even small islands. Luckily, nobody lives there. It's a pretty common thing in this area that some of them disappear underwater and others appear out of the blue because of seismic activity. You'll never find the Dragon's Triangle on any official map of the world, so nobody's quite sure about how large it is in reality. In July 2015, 2 teenagers disappeared after setting sail off the coast of Florida. There's some mystery about what the 2 teens were really getting up to. They told their parents that they were just going to fish, but they told their friends that they were crossing to the Bahamas. Shortly after they left, a line of thunderstorms moved towards the area, and the boys were never heard from again. A massive search was conducted, but sadly, nothing was found. 1 year later, the pair's boat was found off the coast of Bermuda with a broken iPhone and some personal effects left inside. One of the most popular and bizarre theories trying to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery comes from Charles Berlitz. He insists that the area is home to the lost city of Atlantis. The missing ships and planes and malfunctioning equipment, according to him, were all caused by rays of energy let out by the special energy crystals that power Atlantis. While this sounds silly, Berlitz's theory was convincing enough that over 20 million people bought his book worldwide. Previously, the compass wouldn't work well in the Bermuda Triangle since the lines of the 2 poles coincided here, true north and magnetic north. But if you fall into this line, your compass will behave strangely. But the magnetic north is constantly shifting, and now it's far beyond the triangle. No legend says pirates of the last centuries operate in the Bermuda Triangle, or that the Flying Dutchman makes other ships disappear. A popular theory is that ships travel to the distant past or future through a time portal in the Bermuda Triangle. Fortunately, these are all myths. Just imagine hundreds of giant tentacles reaching out to a group of ships sailing through the Bermuda Triangle. In the past centuries, they could easily sink an entire fleet, since the ships were made of wood and were lighter. Squids wrapped decks with their strong tentacles, made holes in the ship's hulls with their sharp beaks. Toothy suction cups could break the masts and tear the sails. The water was filling the holds and slowly rising to the deck. The ship sank in a matter of minutes. Survivors reached the shore and told everyone about huge monsters. This is how the legends of the Kraken appeared. Fortunately, now people have sonars and equipment for monitoring the sea space. They say the main reason why this place is so enigmatic must be the magnetic fields that form this ominous triangle. Ocean floor is made of rocks containing a lot of magnetite. It's more like iron. Magnetic fields react to the high concentration of magnetite on the ocean floor, which may start a sort of conflict between the two. It can often lead to various weather anomalies and, as a result, navigation issues. And naturally, any changes in the ocean floor or the Earth's magnetic fields influence the Bermuda Triangle a lot. Magnetic fields tend to shift their position, so do tectonic plates and even the continents, even though we never notice it. The skies are usually very clear there, but back in 1883, some people witnessed abnormal things in the area. Some claim to have seen large blocks of ice falling from the skies, and the crew even managed to save one as hard proof. Seems like the Bermuda Triangle has an alternate not only on Earth, but even in space. Spacecraft usually don't disappear into thin air though, like there's no air. This anomalous area is really large and stretches right above the South Atlantic. It occupies the area from Chile to Zimbabwe and sits right at the point where Van Allen radiation belts are the closest to the surface of our planet. The Earth has 2 such belts, which come in handy trapping the particles that shoot in from the sun. They do a great job protecting the Earth from radiation. The magnetic field there is lower, so it allows the Earth's radiation belt to come closer to the surface. Whenever a satellite passes by, it will be exposed to radiation, which might lead to serious damage. So, no satellite can take pictures of it. The South Atlantic anomaly is part of the Earth where natural radiation just flows out of control. Still, there is little evidence that all these triangles are really dangerous. Many believe the Bermuda Triangle itself has been proven time and again to be nothing but a work of fiction. In fact, some shipwrecks, such as the Ellen Austin, gained popularity in the middle of the 20th century, while nobody even thought of drawing a triangle in the Bermuda area before that. The mystery was popularized by science fiction writers and became a common myth, while no serious research proved it any more dangerous than other parts of the world's ocean. So, the crew of the Ellen Austin back in 1881 weren't even aware of the Bermuda Triangle back then, let alone afraid of it. What do you think?
Wanna high-five a sea creature? Well, put your hand up for the Tasmanian red handfish. This fish doesn't swim like a fish. It walks. It uses its flipper-like hands to stroll around on the ocean floor. These bottom walkers are disturbed by swimmers and boats a lot. Some people even want to take them home as pets. I think it's better to just give them a wave and swim on by. The vampire squid. Its species name is Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which translates to vampire squid from hell. Oh yes, this vampire squid means to terrify everyone with its name, its dark red color, its spikes at the bottom, and the scary fact that it can basically turn itself inside out. The vampire squid loves putting on a good show, but it's as harmless as a kitten is to humans. It's as if Dracula scared the pants off you, but he didn't have blood-sucking fangs. The vampire squid feeds on food particles from plants and animal matter floating near the ocean's surface. Since they're not predators, they need good defensive strategies, and their vampiric look is designed to ward off large creatures who want to eat them. Turning themselves inside out is a defensive mechanism since the spiky areas in the inner skin are more intimidating. They also shoot out a substance that does not have color, but is packed with bioluminescent particles to distract predators. The vaquita. Going out on a boat off the coast of Mexico sounds like the perfect vacation. The sun, the blue water, the most endangered sea creature. Wait, what? The vaquita isn't dangerous, but don't expect it to stick around to say hello or sign any autographs. It's incredibly shy. This little cow, that's what it means in Spanish, is one tiny sea mammal. With those black markings around its eyes, it looks more like a sea panda to me. Seeing one should make you feel very special. They're on the brink of extinction, mostly because they got caught by accident in fishing nets. It's estimated that there's only 10 left in the wild. The blue dragon. This little creature looks like something out of a kid's fantasy movie. It's called the blue glaucus, casually referred to as the blue dragon or blue angel. It can be found in many places, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. It's kind of a mollusk and it only grows to be about an inch long. What you think is the back is actually the mollusk's bright underbelly. It regularly floats on its back so that its blue colors help it camouflage with the water's waves. The blue dragon isn't just pretty, it's also smart. It usually feasts on Portuguese man-o'-wars, also known as Physalia physalis. The blue dragon stores their stinging cells for later use, in essence, stealing their defensive mechanisms. When the blue dragon is threatened, it releases those stinging cells it stored, directing them at an enemy to sting them with more power than the Portuguese man-o'-war would have been capable of. As they can store a huge amount of stinging cells, they can be a threat to humans. So, if you find one, don't pick it up. It's best to admire it from a distance. The barrel-eye fish. If you ever wanted to have Superman's X-ray vision, looking at the barrel-eye fish will make you feel like you gained that superpower at some point in your life without even realizing it. The barrel eye has a transparent head, so you can see how their eyes and brain look inside. This magnificent creature lives in the deep sea. This is the lowest level of the ocean, where strange creatures roam in near-freezing temperatures and constant darkness. They're exposed to water's pressure that's almost 1,000 times that of the surface. If the idea of the deep sea sends a shiver down your spine, stay tuned to learn about another of its creatures later on. The barrel-eye fish can be found in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. You might be wondering, why oh why would a fish have a see-through head? And that would be a fair question. Since the species was discovered in 1939, it was believed that the fish's eyes were set to see straight ahead and couldn't move, so it was assumed that they had tunnel vision. Scientists Bruce Robinson and Kim Reisenbichler from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute recently discovered that the fish can move its eyes vertically to see through the top of its translucent head, thus noticing if there are predators or prey nearby. The transparent head also allows more light to enter so they can detect prey better. It's believed that the barrel-eye fish eats jellyfish and small fish species. If you dive in the ocean at night, you might be lucky enough to see how orange ball corallomorph blooms in the dark. But make sure to be quick because as soon as you turn on your flashlight to take a good look, it will retract its tubes back into itself. The Megalodon. The whale shark isn't the biggest shark known to humans. If the entire shark species were a kingdom, the prehistoric Megalodon would be the ruler of the sea. Megalodon roamed the ocean a long time ago, about 15.9 to 2.6 million years back between the early Miocene and late Pliocene eras. While they've long been extinct, people are still amazed to learn about these gigantic sea beasts. Megalodon could reach anywhere between 45 feet to 60 feet in length with jaws more than 6 feet wide. A fossil of a tooth that once belonged to a Megalodon measured at 7 inches. Needless to say, I'm pretty stoked that these guys have long been extinct. But there's still some adventurers out there hoping to meet this monster one day. The Dumbo Octopus. This adorable creature, or creepy creature, or however you want to see it, is officially called Grimpoteuthis. More casually, it's referred to as the Dumbo octopus, named after the Disney character. Though Dumbo, the elephant, not the octopus, was teased for his big ears, it's highly unlikely that this adorable octopus gets teased by its water neighbors. They are the deepest living octopuses, living in the deep sea, and you know how scary that place is. They're only about 8 inches tall and spend their days hovering just above the seafloor eating snails, worms, and other food they find in the current or near ocean vents. There are nearly 17 species of Dumbo octopus, and they all have differences in height, color, and body parts. If you can't get enough strange animals, you'll be glad to learn that the deep sea has barely been explored by humans. So keep an eye out. There are bound to be more fascinating animals discovered in the deep in the future. The sea angel. These creatures might look and sound pretty cute, but their diet is far from sunshine and lollipops. Their favorite food are sea butterflies. They lay mucus traps for them and wait in ambush. The squat anemone shrimp. This shrimp is tiny, only 0.5 inches. It's also known as a dancer shrimp because of its peculiar behavior. When agitated, it raises its bottom above its head and does a little dance. Divers also say it readily jumps on their hands and cleans them. The coconut crab. This guy may look pretty creepy, especially when the sun goes down. Mature coconut crabs are around 3 feet in length. Their preferred foods are coconuts, but they can also hunt down lizards and even large birds. The slender snipe eel. Slender snipe eel is a slim and long creature that's still a mystery for marine scientists. It's 4 feet long and it has at least 750 bones in its spine, which is much more than any other animal in the world. The sea pen. Sea pen is 7 feet long and it has a lot of varieties, but most of them look indeed like a pen or a quill. The similarity is even more striking when the animal has a water-filled bulb that anchors it to the floor. The Persian carpet flatworm. This creature looks indeed like a carpet, despite being very small by comparison. It's only 4 inches long, able to become both male and female. It doesn't really mate with other flatworms. Rather, it fights them for the right to bear posterity. The flamingo-tongued sea snails. Tourists love these extraordinary snails for their pretty colors, thinking it's a shell, but in fact, the shell is quite dull and hidden underneath colorful soft tissues. They eat softer, toxic parts of corals and store their toxins to protect themselves.
Think you know what lurks in the depths of the ocean? While nearly 95% of our oceans haven't been explored yet, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. But thanks to brave explorers, deep-sea cameras, and awesome archaeologists, we do know about some pretty incredible sea creatures living in our waters today, and millions of years ago. From the 9-foot spider crab to the 60-foot prehistoric Megalodon, these sea dwellers come in all shapes and sizes. But let's focus on sea creatures famous for their huge size. Can you guess which living species of whale is the largest? Well, it's not the orca, but that's a good guess. The orca is a toothed whale that can grow to anywhere from 23 feet to 32 feet, which is slightly smaller than a school bus. How about the narwhal? Nope, they're not the biggest either. These unicorns of the sea live mainly in Arctic waters and only grow 13 feet to 20 feet in length, and that's including their 9-foot tusk. Tired of guessing? Okay, I give in. The largest whale that still exists today is the blue whale. At a jaw-dropping 82 feet to 105 feet, the blue whale is not only the biggest whale we know of, but is currently the largest animal to have ever lived on Earth. Seriously. These animals are bigger than a T-Rex, and even the prehistoric Megalodon. If you were to put a blue whale next to a school bus, it would look like it could swallow it. Think about that. According to National Geographic, a blue whale's tongue can weigh the same as an elephant. And their hearts can weigh as much as a car. That doesn't even sound possible. It's no wonder these giants need to eat about 4 tons of krill every day. While there aren't too many animals living today that can compete with the blue whale's epic proportions, there is an entirely different species that is a good contender, and it's not quite what you would expect. It's a jellyfish. No, I'm not talking about the little jellyfish that wash up on the shore and ruin a perfectly good day at the beach. I'm referring to the lion's mane jellyfish, the biggest jellyfish around. This invertebrate can grow up to 120 feet long. They also come in different gorgeous colors like red, purple, or even shades of orange. As if their length wasn't impressive, the lion's mane jellyfish boast a whopping 8 sets of 70 to 150 tentacles. That means they can have up to 1,200 in total. And here's the giant oceanic manta ray, the largest type of ray in the world. Their wingspan can be longer than a bus. These guys can reach 30 feet in length. They also have the biggest brain compared to body size among all fish. Unlike their stingray cousins, mantas don't have venomous tails. And while the lion's mane jellyfish and the blue whale are yet to be beaten for the longest sea creature, there is one marine creature that can grow even larger in length. The Portuguese Physalia physalis, tentacles and all, can reach a length of 165 feet long, and that's according to mentalfloss.com. While this thing may look a lot like a jellyfish, it's actually known as a siphonophore, and there are hundreds and sometimes thousands of them that are genetically identical. Their long tentacles help the organism catch prey, and its sting is fatal to most animals, even humans in some cases. What's even creepier is that if one of the tentacles comes off the organism for whatever reason, it can float around the water for days before decomposing. Even if it's detached, this tentacle can still sting you. But don't go running out of the ocean just yet. Your chances of being hurt by a Portuguese Physalia physalis sting are pretty slim. However, if you do get stung, the side effects aren't pretty, with welts, stomach cramps, an elevated heart rate, and an upset stomach. While you don't want to go anywhere near these long creatures, they sure are pretty to look at. Check out all those colors. The Shastasaurus is the biggest marine reptile that has ever existed. These predators lived during the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago. These amazing giants could reach lengths of up to 69 feet and weighed more than 75 tons. This made the Shastasaurus as heavy as a blue whale. And if you could stand this creature up vertically, it'd be as tall as a 7-story building. Despite appearances, the Shastasaurus was actually pretty slim for its size. Its ribcage was only 6 feet across. You'd think that this big guy was chowing down on other dinosaurs, but that's not the case at all. This reptile survived on a diet that consisted of small fish and cephalopods, like octopuses and squids. The Albertonectes is a bright representative of the plesiosaur family. meaning that this marine reptile had a small head on an incredibly long neck and large flipper-like limbs that helped it move through the water. These creatures occupied the seas around North America 76 to 70 million years ago. The length of this sea monster could reach 38 feet, with its neck taking up 23 feet of that length. Its neck was a true record breaker. It had a whopping 76 bones in it. No other animal known to humankind has had so many vertebrae in its neck. Scientists aren't sure why they needed such a lengthy neck. They might have used it to collect shellfish off the seabed, or perhaps it helped them capture their main prey, fish and squids. This aquatic reptile also had gastroliths in its stomachs. Some of them were as big as 5.5 inches in diameter. The Tylosaurus belonged to the mosasaur family. It dominated the shallow seas of North America about 85 to 80 million years ago. This was an enormous predator, with the biggest representatives reaching 45 feet in length. It had a narrow hydrodynamic body with a blunt, powerful head that the animal used to ram and stun its prey. Its body was equipped with agile flippers and a long tail decorated with a maneuverable fin. The Tylosaurus was a carnivore, and its diet included not only fish, turtles, and small sharks, but also other mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, and flightless birds. Meet Ophthalmosaurus. This prehistoric reptile thrived during the late Jurassic period and lived in oceans all over the world. Ophthalmosaurus weighed somewhere around 6,000 pounds and grew to approximately 16 feet long, according to newdinosaurs.com. That's about the same length as the beluga whale that exists today. It's too bad these guys went extinct before we had a chance to see them ourselves, as their cartoonish wide eyes and dolphin-like features are pretty darn cute. Of course, the Ophthalmosaurus evolved over time to become ophthalmologists, or eye doctors that we know today. No, that's just a lie. Just testing you. The Mosasaurus is a truly gigantic predator that dominated the seas all over the world about 66 million years ago. According to fossil evidence, some specimens could be more than 50 feet in length. This fact makes the Mosasaurus the biggest marine carnivore of its time. One of the most terrifying things about this creature was its crocodile-like head, decorated with literally hundreds of razor-sharp teeth neatly organized in 2 rows on both jaws. The thing is that it was pretty challenging for the Mosasaurus to grab its prey in the water. That's why it had all these teeth, plus something special: pterygoid teeth anchored to the bones on the roof of its mouth. This made hunting and holding onto its prey much easier. The Styxosaurus belonged to the plesiosaur family and lived during the late Cretaceous period, around 85 to 70 million years ago. Upon first glance at this dinosaur, you might mistake it for a sea snake, and it'd be an honest mistake. Styxosauruses were about 35 feet in length, but over 16 feet of that consisted just of their long snake-like neck. They had a comparatively small body and weighed approximately 4 tons. Their mouths were full of razor-sharp cone-shaped teeth that they used to catch fish. They didn't need to chew their prey, thanks to the 200 small stones called gastroliths in their bellies that probably aided in digestion. At the same time, some scientists believe that the Styxosaurus used these stones to sink to the ocean bottom in search of particular types of fish. Looks kinda like Nessie to me. The stonefish. Stonefish aren't going to win any beauty contests, unless the pageant is for best rock look-alike. Their tiny unreflective eyes and rough skin blend in perfectly with their environment. A large head, an even bigger mouth, and a home full of, it's rocks. And just because you're on the beach doesn't mean you're safe. Stonefish can survive for 24 hours out of the water. Stepping on one or even handling one won't be that fun. Their dorsal fin spines have extremely strong venom. It shoots out when they get stepped on, and can lead to paralysis or even heart failure. You'll need help fast. No wonder they're one of the most dangerous creatures in the water, or anywhere. Be careful when scrambling around rocky areas. They love to play hide and seek. The deep sea dragonfish. If there were a prize for the most hideous fish in the ocean, the deep-sea dragonfish would win. With slimy, scaleless skin, massive teeth, and a face only a mother could love, this bad boy of the sea is nothing to mess with. It likes to swim between 700 feet and 6,000 feet below the surface of the ocean, where the waters are the darkest and coldest. Along with some other creatures on this list, the deep-sea dragonfish relies on its bioluminescent body parts to catch prey. It also uses its hanging appendage, which boasts a little red light on the end, coming out from its lower jaw. Many fish mistake this little light for prey, luring them right into the jaws of the deep-sea dragonfish. Very clever dragonfish, very clever indeed. The fangtooth. The Mariana Trench is an underwater trench with a depth of 35,000 feet, nearly 7 miles below the ocean's surface. Let that sink in. While scientists know the Mariana Trench exists, it's one of the least explored places on Earth. It's also the deepest area of Earth's oceans. And although many creatures down there probably haven't even been seen by humans yet, scientists have had the creepy pleasure of getting to know the fangtooth. The fangtooth fish shamelessly lives up to its name. Just look at that thing. The fangtooth is carnivorous and feeds on just about anything it can find that gets caught in its sharp-toothed mouth. These fish rely on their contact chemoreception to find prey. In other words, they can sense chemical residue that comes off of other living organisms in the deep sea. This is because they don't have any light-producing cells on their bodies, unlike many other deep-sea fish. On top of all that, it's pretty dark down there, so whatever crosses their path, they chomp on. While these guys look pretty scary, they're not a threat to humans. They only grow about 7 inches long. Even so, I wouldn't want to run into one of these things during a relaxing swim in the ocean. The Dunkelosteius. Strangely enough, this prehistoric fish, known as the T-Rex of the seas, had no teeth. Those were replaced with bony plates that allowed it to have the strongest bite among other monsters of its size. The Goblin shark. If you thought the movies about sharks were scary, this next deep-sea creature will make you swear off going for dips in the ocean forever. However, it lives 3,000 feet underwater, so you'll never likely see it face to face. The Goblin shark looks like a cross between a shark and a creature from your worst nightmare. These sharks boast a protruding sword-like snout with a jaw that juts out to match. Unlike other sharks that have more of a gray hue, this creepy thing looks not so pretty and pink. Aside from their scary demeanor, what do scientists really know about the Goblin shark? Well, not much, except that they can grow up to 18 feet in length. Looks like there's still a lot to learn about these guys, if you dare to. By the way, did you know that sharks don't sleep? Many species have to keep water moving over their gills to get oxygen, so they can't fall into a deep sleep like we do. That's why they stay half awake during rest. Typically, sharks don't even close their eyes. The cookie cutter shark. This shark is a living horror, with lower teeth being big and sharp, while the upper ones are much smaller. When its teeth fall off, the shark eats them to maintain calcium levels. Pretty smart solution for a shark. The frilled shark. Studying the frilled shark is like looking through a portal back to prehistoric times. That's because scientists think that these eel-like sharks haven't changed much since their oldest ancestors roamed the deep sea waters, so they're sometimes referred to as living fossils. These sharks' mouths are filled with a terrifying 25 rows of backward-facing sharp teeth, 300 in total. They're designed to grasp prey and hold them tight so they can't get away, according to early studies of the shark conducted in 1884 and published in the Bulletin of the Essex Institute. Luckily for swimmers, the frilled sharks live between 390 feet and 4,200 feet below the ocean's surface, so they'll probably never run into them. Probably. This is probably the worst nightmare of any dentist. The northern stargazer. Take a look at this cutie. The northern stargazer is definitely not something you'd wish to see on the ocean floor. This horrid creature hides its body under the sand, leaving its face above to wait for prey. The tasseled wobbegong. Here's another carpet shark on our list. It lies low on the bottom of the sea and patiently waits for its prey to come by. The Australian ghost shark. The Australian ghost shark isn't really even a shark, but a very bony fish. It's also a living fossil. It hasn't changed within the last 400 million years. Believe it or not, sharks and humans have a common ancestor that lived around 440 million years ago. Even though we both evolved in our own way, there are still some signs of that connection. For example, the genome of an elephant shark is very similar to humans. The Leopleurodon. This list of terrifying creatures would be incomplete without mentioning the terrifying and prehistoric Leopleurodon. This carnivorous marine reptile existed during the Colovian stage of the Middle Jurassic era and ruled the waters at 9 feet in length. Scientists believe Leopleurodon thrived in this deep-sea trench because of its ability to swim long distances and its 4 paddle-like limbs. While they probably weren't able to propel themselves toward prey like other animals of the area, they did manage to accelerate and attack very ruthlessly and efficiently. Additionally, they relied on their long snouts to smell prey, which leads scientists to believe they didn't rely on sight for hunting. This means they could have thrived in the dark Mariana Trench. Around 150 million years ago, Leopleurodon became extinct due to competition for prey against other thriving marine reptiles. And I think I speak for all of us when I say, thank goodness for that. Considering that scientists have only explored 5% of the ocean floor and found some of the scariest sea creatures imaginable, one can only dream of what other animals reside in the deep sea waters. Perhaps it's best to keep them in your imagination. Am I right? The megamouth shark. This shark is a filter feeder, and it's friendly to humans, although its huge mouth can look quite threatening. Like basking sharks, it swims with its mouth constantly wide open, as if it were on Twitter. The gulper eel. This deep-sea eel has an easily distended belly that allows it to swallow prey twice its size in a single monstrous bite. They have very unusual jaw shapes and can reach about 2 to 3 feet in length. Do you see that large log near the ocean floor? Maybe it's part of an old ship. Treasure, gold, diamonds, I'm rich! Well, as you get closer, you notice something. It's swimming! It's not a shark or a dolphin, it's a saltwater crocodile! Now don't panic. If you bump into one of these reptiles in the sea, it's unlikely it'll think of you as food. Crocodiles have a special valve in their throat that stops them from drowning underwater, but that doesn't mean they can't bite. Usually, they're heading to a nearby island, and the quickest way there is to body surf. They can't really take the ferry, you know. Watching one from a distance should be okay. Just don't swim to shore right away. They love to ambush their lunch in shallow water. If there's one time I'd want to see a great white shark, it's when I'm diving with crocodiles. They'll gladly take a crocodile-sized nibble, given the right motivation. You travel along the coast of the North Atlantic. In your Jeep, you're driving through the jungles and plains, taking amazing pictures of wildlife for your blog. And then, you accidentally come upon a place that isn't marked on any map. It's a bay with an azure coast. No human has ever set foot here. You've discovered a huge footprint of an unknown creature on the sandy beach. The size of the print is more than half of your vehicle. Suddenly, out of the tropical forest that borders with the beach, you hear a deafening roar. Palm trees crack and break as an unknown monster comes out of the jungle. To understand what it is, let's go back to the past. Hundreds of millions of years ago, shortly before the huge meteorite hit the Earth, a group of tyrannosaurs migrated to the coast of the North Atlantic. There, they got to a huge bay facing the ocean. For a long time, thanks to the natural protection of this place, they were safe from all natural disasters that had been occurring to the Earth at that time. The fall of a meteorite, the Ice Age, and earthquakes didn't bother the T-Rexes much. But they weren't the only monsters in this place. A group of Megalodons swam to the bay for safety too. The most ferocious creatures of the oceans and of land were forced to live in one place. For millions of years, these monsters cooked in a huge cauldron called evolution. As a result, a new creature of destructive power appeared. The new hybrid beast has the very best of two ancient titans. Tyrannosaurus Rex, with a length of 40 feet and weighing about 9 tons. It's roughly the size of a school bus. The king of dinosaurs had thick and strong neck muscles that could hold a large skull and jaws filled with 60 sharp teeth. And the thick tail of the T-Rex helped to balance the body. The bite force of the giant dino reached 12,800 pounds, which is as if an adult elephant sat on you. Strong enough, but it's nothing compared to the strength and size of the Megalodon. The shark reached 50 feet in length, slightly less than a subway car, and weighed 75 tons, which is more than a tank. This is almost 8 times heavier than a T-Rex. The Megalodon's jaws were filled with 300 sharp teeth, each the size of an adult human palm. And the bite force of a Megalodon is 6 times stronger than the T-Rex's. And here, these two beasts become one, inheriting strong Megalodon jaws, 360 teeth, and a massive Tyrannosaurus skull. The hybrid monster moves on 2 legs, but has fins on its back and the tip of its tail, as well as webbed toes. Its length from the tail to the skull is 70 feet, and its weight is about 90 tons. This is the largest creature in the entire history of the planet. After a blue whale, of course. Since it survived all natural disasters and had no competitors in the food chain, it's been able to live to this day. And here you see the Megalodon Rex, or Tyrannolodon, however you want. Its roar deafens you. The monster is coming at you. Every step feels like a little earthquake. You press the gas pedal, but the car doesn't go. The wheels are stuck in the sand. There's no choice. You leave the car and take an inflatable boat with a small motor from the trunk. At this moment, the Tyrannolodon grabs the Jeep with its jaws and crushes it like a cardboard box. The pressure, comparable to the weight of 6 adult elephants, is now being applied to your Jeep. The monster chews it like so much chewing gum. You can hear its sharp teeth cutting through the metal and rubber on the wheels. And then, the dinosaur spits the car out. Meanwhile, you run to the water, start the engine, and sail away on the boat as far as possible. The dinosaur runs after you and jumps into the ocean. It swims like a shark. You can see a fin sticking out of the water, the size of a small sailing boat. Fortunately, the monster isn't able to catch up with you. The Megalodon's speed is about 10 miles per hour, but now it slows down almost twice as much because it has massive hind legs. The webbing on the legs helps to swim, but it's still a big weight. The physical form of the dinosaur doesn't allow it to accelerate too much. 8 miles per hour is its maximum. The fin is moving further and further away from you, but at this moment, the engine starts to rattle. Oh no! You remember you didn't fill the tank with fuel! This means that in a couple of minutes, you will be left alone with a huge predator. It won't see you since you've sailed far away. But the shark part of our monster has a great sense of smell in the water. You won't be able to escape its nose. You turn the boat and head for the shore. In the distance, the triangular fin is swimming around. You give it a wide berth to avoid being caught by Tyrannolodon. But you don't have enough gas. The engine shuts off. You start rowing with an oar, but now you're moving too slow. The monster is inevitably catching up with you. A huge dinosaur emerges from the water and falls back, creating a huge wave. It throws you to the shore along with the boat. The monster comes out of the water and runs after you. You have a chance to save yourself because the speed of the Tyrannolodon is about 10 miles per hour, which is slightly slower than the speed of the T-Rex. You run and easily find a shelter, but you realize in time this is a bad tactic, since the T-Rex part of the monster has well-developed smell receptors. It can sniff you out as well as a domestic cat. You just need to run as far as possible from this beast. You can hear the deafening roar of the Megalodon Rex behind you. Trees are breaking, the ground is shaking, but then it's suddenly all quiet. The Pteranodon's heart does hard work when it pumps blood through the huge dinosaur's body. When it runs, the heart works even more intensively. Because of this load, the dinosaur has little endurance. It quickly runs out of energy. Perhaps it's sitting on the ground right now and catching its breath. Tired, you also stop. You can't hear the dinosaur's footsteps. The T-Rex couldn't hunt small dinosaurs, as they easily ran away from it, and its approach was heard from afar. Only big plant-eating dinosaurs, as slow as itself, could become its dinner. It's the 21st century now, and the dinosaurs are extinct. So what does this monster eat? At this moment, you can hear the trees crunching a few feet away from you. Through the bushes and leaves, you can see a large triangular plate. You run to the side and realize that this is a real stegosaurus. It seems the Jurassic period is still preserved on this piece of land. The herbivorous dinosaur, the size of a bus, calmly eats grass and makes noise. On the other side, you hear the heavy footsteps of the hungry Pteranodon. The Stegosaurus senses the upcoming enemy. It gets into a fighting position. Pteranodon is approaching. You run back to a safe place and watch the fight. Pteranodon runs out of the jungle. It growls, opens its massive jaw, and attacks the herbivore. The Stegosaurus quickly hits the enemy with its barbed tail. The Pteranodon falls to the side. Trees shatter into splinters, and the ground shakes under the huge monster. It gets up and furiously runs at the opponent. You decide to run away to buy yourself some time. You come to the shore, jump on the boat, and row as far as possible from the bay. The roars of two giant dinosaurs come from the jungle. You decide to sail along the bay and get to the beach with civilization. While you're sailing, you notice that it's suddenly become quiet. Too quiet. Waves appear on the surface, but there's no wind. The water bubbles, and you hear a terrible hum from the ocean depths. Through the blue surface, you can see several tentacles. They're huge, and they're on your every side. This must be a huge squid, or even a kraken. But then, you see the head of this monster is a shark's one. Now you definitely can't escape, because the Megalodon swims out of the water. But this is a completely different story. The deeper you go, the creepier they get. You're about to travel to the darkest ocean depths and check whether this claim is true. Are the creatures living there as scary as people think? You go 120 feet down underwater. Pay close attention to the bottom under your flippers. Oh my, what's that terrifying face half hidden in the sand? That's the northern stargazer. You can meet this fish in the eastern United States. It buries itself in the sand until unsuspecting prey gets near. Then, the nightmarish creature electrically shocks the poor animal and dines on it. You are moving deeper to 240 feet under the surface. That's where you spot a colorful, puffy creature, no more than 1 foot long. It's the sarcastic fringehead. At first, the fish seems to be harmless. Only unless it's provoked. When this animal is agitated, it opens its huge mouth to fend off predators. This defense tactic is a sight to behold, both surprising and frightening. Luckily, the fish is no threat to people whatsoever. The creature you see next can comfortably live in shallow waters, but you meet it at a depth of 900 feet. You don't even need to wonder why the animal's called the Game of Thrones brittle star. Unlike starfish that slowly crawl across the seabed, this creature moves fast. It wriggles its long, flexible arms to get from point A to point B. Its body is protected by a hard calcium carbonate shell. Also called snake stars, these creatures are tiny and easily fit in nooks, cracks, and small crevices in rocks. At a much greater depth of 2,000 feet, you come across the giant squid. For a long time, it was thought to be a creature from legends rather than a real animal. The giant squid was first caught on camera in 2001, and it's exactly as big as its name implies. The creature's eyeballs are the size of soccer balls, and the squid itself can weigh up to 600 pounds. Almost 3,000 feet below the surface, you get spooked by another creepy-looking animal. It's somewhat red and rather small, no longer than 1 foot long. As you approach the creature, it looks rather docile, or maybe just indifferent. The vampire squid, that's the animal's name, looks like an umbrella with tentacles. It doesn't even produce ink, so you leave it alone. Soon after that, at a depth of 3,200 feet, you meet the cookie cutter shark. This creature is a parasite. It attaches itself to big fishes, dolphins, whales, and sometimes even people. Then, using its neatly arranged serrated teeth, it gouges out cookie-sized pieces of meat. This nasty glowing animal doesn't grow larger than 20 inches and lives in the ocean twilight zone. At a depth of 3,300 feet, the light becomes a rare and valuable thing. The animals living that far away from the surface have to evolve unusual features to survive. That's how the barrel-eye fish ended up with a transparent head and 2 super-sensitive barrel-shaped eyes. Right now, pretty much like always, they're pointed upward, allowing the fish to see potential prey and you. Almost 4,000 feet below the surface, you see something droopy and saggy. The blobfish doesn't have a skeleton or any muscle. Its jelly-like flesh lets the creature survive incredible water pressure. Despite its appearance, the blobfish is an ambush predator. It usually lies very still on the bottom, waiting for unsuspecting prey to swim by. You go a bit deeper and spot a creature that looks particularly ghastly. The goblin shark senses prey with its snout. The creature's terrifying jaws are attached to elastic ligaments. When some animal comes too close, the shark catapults its mouth forward to catch it. If your mouth could do the same, you would be able to eat things dangling 7 inches away from your face. Even deeper than that, at 5,000 feet, you notice another member of the shark family. The frilled shark looks like an overgrown eel, but its gills are lined with red fringe at the edges, hence the name. The creature's horrifying mouth has 25 rows of razor-sharp backward-facing teeth, 300 in total. The shark prefers to hover in the water, waiting for its prey to come closer. Then, it charges at it like a snake. Suddenly, you see something glow brightly like an electric bulb. But after coming closer, you recoil in horror. The creature looks like an upgraded eel equipped with oversized teeth. That's the deep-sea dragonfish that can live at a depth of 6,000 feet. Chemical processes going on inside the fish's body produce an eerie red glow. This glow is used to communicate with other fish. At the same depth, you meet another deep-sea inhabitant. Its most prominent feature is its huge mouth. Thanks to it, the gulper eel can swallow its prey whole. Its stomach can expand to a terrifying size when it needs to fit something large. At a depth of 6,600 feet, you come across an angry-looking creature with a fishing rod over its head. It's the deep-sea anglerfish. The animal has an unusual dorsal spine, even though it's worn only by females. It protrudes above their mouth and has a lure on its tip, some luminous flesh that baits prey. The anglerfish has such a big mouth and its body is so pliable that it can swallow animals twice its own size. You're 7,000 feet down when you see another fish that's glowing in the dark. The black dragonfish is a sly creature. It has its light-producing organs arranged along its belly. The spooky creature also has gleaming flashlights next to its eyes. They help the animal find prey and attract potential mates. At the same depth, you also spot an enormous pillbug. But unlike the critter you can find in your garden, this one is at least 20 inches long. That's the giant isopod, and it is, indeed, related to the roly-poly, as well as crabs and shrimps. These creatures may look somewhat scary, but they're harmless. They feast on other deep-sea animals only after those have passed away. At a depth of 13,000 feet, you notice the ocean floor has become a bit fluffy. That's because it's covered with zombie worms. These creatures rarely grow to be more than 2 inches long, and still, they can break down fairly large animals, so strong the acid they produce is. The worms' feathery appearance makes them look like plants, but the truth is, these creatures munch on rock-hard bones of the world's largest animals, such as whales. The grid-eye fish almost scares you out of your mind soon after that. This creature has a pair of large greenish oval plates on the top of its head and no eyes whatsoever. Experts believe that these bony membranes detect light coming from predators, saving the fish's life. You're now 3 miles down below the surface, and that's where you spot something bizarre on the bottom. It's definitely a fish, but it's standing on the ocean floor on 3 long, rigid legs. Ah, it's the tripod fish. Curious rather than scary. This creature has adapted to the almost complete darkness by giving up on its vision. It has to rely on vibration and touch to sense prey. And then, the fish uses its fins as hands to transport food directly into its mouth. You don't have time to go any deeper before you spot the faceless fish. This slightly off-putting creature has no eyes, and its mouth, smiling a Mona Lisa smile, is underneath its body. For the first time, the faceless cusk, which is the creature's official name, was seen more than a century ago. The next time it happened was only in 2017. Once you've reached a depth of 6 miles below the surface, you see deep-sea cucumbers. These bizarre creatures are much bigger than their shallow water relatives. They spend most of their time on the sea floor. But if they need to escape predators, they are able to swim away. Deep-sea cucumbers have bright purplish coloring, tiny feet, and tentacles that surround their mouths. Cute. The question is, why do these deep-sea creatures look so scary? Life is very different there, at the bottom. Tremendous water pressure, a lack of food, and constant darkness. You have to adapt to survive in such extreme conditions.
So, a mysterious discovery was made deep in the Red Sea, the so-called death pools. Woo, that's scary. In 2020, researchers embarked on a dive into the Red Sea. The mission spot was in the Gulf of Aqaba, between Saudi Arabia and Egypt. Near the end of their expedition, as they ventured deeper into the darkening waters, they noticed some strange seaweed floating above the seafloor. They decided to use a remotely operated vehicle and investigate it. Suddenly, they discovered these strange, motionless lakes of water within the sea. These are called brine pools. They're basically pockets of salty water deep on the ocean floor. And when I say salty, I mean it. Sometimes they're up to 8 times saltier than the ocean water itself. Mysteriously, they don't mix well with the surroundings. They formed millions of years ago, sometime during the Miocene epoch, back when weird creatures roamed the earth, like me, and deeply buried mineral deposits dissolved into the water. The largest pool spans about 170,000 square feet. Meanwhile, 3 smaller ones are under 107 square feet each. At first, this discovery didn't seem that scary. But here's why they're so horrifying. Not only are they disgustingly salty, they also lack oxygen. Now hold on a sec, isn't that normal for something that's underwater? Well, it turns out the Earth's waters are full of oxygen, and at least half of this element on our planet comes from the oceans. Just like plants on land, marine plants such as phytoplankton, seaweed, and algae munch on sunlight and produce oxygen through photosynthesis. They release lots of it into the surroundings. Marine life then eats half of it, so only about a quarter of the oxygen that we breathe actually comes from the oceans. Just like us, sea creatures need this element to survive. Without it, they can't breathe and support their metabolism to live. That's why these pools are super dangerous for most of them. It's like a puddle of thick syrup for bugs. When they get in, the poor things immediately suffocate and pass away. Which is why the pools are surrounded by a graveyard of marine animals. But let's see how these things can exist in the first place. Have you ever tried making ice cubes from salty water? Spoiler, it's pretty hard. When you add salt, the water gets harder than usual to freeze, a phenomenon that has a funny name, freezing point depression, Oh, that's because salt interferes with the hydrogen bonds between water molecules. As it finally freezes, stuff like particles, dirt, or dissolved salts get pushed out to the sides. As a result, the salt's kind of squeezed out of the ice crystals and gets trapped near the edges in small bubbles or pockets. Something similar happens in the ocean when seawater starts freezing under super cold polar caps. The salt doesn't freeze with the water. Instead, it gets pushed out, forming a super salty cold liquid, the brine. And then it sinks down to the ocean floor. On a large scale, all this process also helps currents to form. Despite being so dangerous, the pools are still full of microbial life, because microbes couldn't care less, they'll survive anywhere. There are literally thick mats of them in the brines. There are also some salt-loving creatures, like shrimps and eels, hovering around the pool's edges. They're being super creepy, waiting to catch unsuspecting prey that ventures too close to the toxic death pool. Ew. Well, it sounds icky, I know. But this discovery gives us some fascinating insights into how life might have originated on Earth. We already know from the evolution theory that we came from the ocean, but now scientists think that life might have begun in the deep sea in some super dark, oxygen-free places. These brine pools are like time capsules. They're one of the closest things we found to the early Earth. They can tell us the planet's history of earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and more. For example, they have some traces of rainfall that happened over 1,000 years ago. And they can also help us search for life on other water-rich planets. For example, Mars most likely used to have huge oceans on it. Now, NASA scientists want to send a special instrument called HABIT for a special red planet mission to study things similar to our brine pools. This will tell us more about how life appears and survives in the universe. There is lots of unexplored fascinating stuff like this in the Red Sea. That's why scientists conducted the so-called Decade Expedition and spent around 5 months exploring the place. This expedition was launched by the National Center for Wildlife. They made so many remarkable discoveries that now we've got 77 new research papers. For example, they found over 10 blue holes, incredible underwater sinkholes that host unique ecosystems. They also learned that dolphins can use those blue holes to protect their young from predators. Scientists also found traces of great white sharks, a creepy community of deep-sea lanternfish living in low oxygen conditions, and even a new coral species. It's the most resilient deep-sea corals that also vibe just fine without oxygen, like microbes we mentioned. Speaking of which, research also showed us some new ancient thermal vents and large blobs of microbial formations near Farasand Island. Now, can you believe that with all that, we only explored 5% of the ocean? It's divided into several layers based on depth. Each layer becomes darker and more isolated from sunlight as we go deeper. The places that no sunlight can reach are terrifying. Now, the fun, cute layer with dolphins and turtles is called the epipelagic or sunlight zone. It's so tiny, but even this layer is about 650 feet deep. Then we have the mesopelagic or twilight zone. It's the layer of mysterious octopus, shark, and other loners, which extend to about 3,000 feet down. And then the horrors begin after this one. We encounter the bathypelagic or midnight zone. It extends to 13,000 feet below the surface, about a half of Everest above you. Here we have the famous poor blobfish, squids, and anglerfish. Below it is the abyssal zone. It extends to about 20,000 feet deep. Since there's not much sunlight or oxygen, as we mentioned, most creatures here are quite small, like tube worms and shrimp. The darkness continues until we arrive at the scariest place of the planet, the place full of trenches formed by tectonic plate movements, the Hadal Zone. It's named after Hades, the deity of the underworld in Greek mythology. Just like Hades' realm is dark, remote, and guarded, the Hadal Zone is the deepest and most depressing part of the ocean. It starts at depths of around 20,000 feet and can go down to 36,000 feet and more. The famous Mariana Trench also belongs to this zone. Only 3 people in history have ever explored these depths in person, making it one of the least explored and most mysterious places on our planet. However, despite crazy high pressure, near freezing temperatures, and complete darkness, there are still things who manage to survive here. guys like amphipods, which are critters who feed on dead material sinking from above, and the hadal snailfish, which lives as deep as 27,000 feet. So scientists used to assume that if there's no sunlight, there wouldn't be that much oxygen around. But one day, a research team decided to measure the levels of oxygen in one of those deep zones. Surprisingly, the levels were super high. They checked the equipment thinking that it was malfunctioning, but nope, all the sensors showed the same thing. Turns out the oxygen was somehow generated by rocks. These small potato-sized rocks on the seafloor are called polymetallic nodules. They're rich in metals like copper, nickel, and cobalt, and they're basically like small batteries. When you put a battery in salt water, it can produce bubbles of gas, a process called electrolysis. In the same way, these rocks create tiny electric currents, which are powerful enough to produce the same gases, splitting water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. It's the first time we saw oxygen being produced by some non-living minerals. This is what scientists now call dark oxygen. It turned out that about half of large marine species, or megafauna, were living just on dark oxygen alone. All these discoveries are reshaping our understanding of where and how life could evolve. It means that we might be able to find life on other planets or satellites with low oxygen conditions, like Enceladus and Europa, the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and they have large bodies of frozen water on them. Wow!
What a peaceful morning. Can't wait to start the trip. Wait a minute. What's wrong with the water level? No! The wave is already here! I gotta move as fast as I can! Hey, lady! It's too dangerous!
Ah! Ow!
Oh, the water is so cold! Come on! Let's go upstairs!
Okay.
We need to climb as high as we can. Otherwise, we're gonna be washed away. Don't panic. We'll get out of here. Look! There's a departing train! We should try to jump on it! Hey! Come on, buddy! Let us in! Wow! Oh, watch out! Come on! I got you! Look! Here's another train! Run! Hey! Wait for us! I don't like it. There's too much water. We should jump on the railways and try to escape. It's falling on our heads! That was epic. We gotta climb. Are you ready?
Let's go.
Come on, I got you.
Oh no, another one.
Ah! Watch your head!
Ow!
Give me your hand! Don't be afraid. I'm here. I'll pull you out. There you go.
Yeah, wow.
No worries. The water is coming. Ugh. Everything's falling apart. Let's get out of here.
Okay.
Let's go. Ugh. Let's run to the front car. I have an idea. Luckily, I can drive trains. Hear the sound of water? Turn around! The water is coming!
Wow. Let's get out of here.
Whoa! The wave is huge! Hold on! Whoa! Thank goodness we're inside the train.
Today's our lucky day.
Oops! This train didn't go far, did it? Wow!
Not injured?
No worries.
Let's go, bro. Move it.
Come on. Whoa! I don't like it. Ugh. I gotta move quickly. It seems like the worst is over. Let's go this way. Ah! What the heck? What is that? Whoa! Ugh. Ugh. Oh no! I gotta get out of here! Yeah! Don't mess with me! Bye! Whoa! Ah, no! Please don't hurt me! Ugh. Well, looks like it's my only way out. Wow! Okay, it's not that bad, is it? Ugh. Whoa! Ugh. Oh, that was tough. I gotta move on. Oh no! How did you get here?
Phew. Wow. We kind of ran away.
Don't panic. We'll get out of here.
Oh no. Hurry up!
Run! Oh, shh. I should be quiet. Oh, watch out! Whoa! Come on! Whoa! Ugh.
Hurry up!
Let's go! Ugh. Ugh. Get off me, you monster! I have an idea. Whoa! Everything's falling apart! Let's get out of here!
Phew. Thank goodness we're alive.
Well, at least we're safe.
Today's our lucky day.
Wow! Don't be afraid. I have an idea.
It's running over here, and it doesn't look friendly. Hurry up! Ah!
Ugh. Everything's falling apart. Come on. The water is so cold! Ugh. Everything's falling apart! Come on! Okay now, what's next? I have an idea. Luckily I can drive trains. Oops. This train didn't go far, did it? That was epic.
how they say it's better to just hand over your wallet if you run into a mugger? Instead of surrendering their wallets, sea cucumbers choose to spit out some of their insides to fend off predators like crabs and fish. It's a natural defense mechanism for them, and they quickly grow those organs back in just a few days, thanks to special cells inside their bodies. It's not the only weird thing sea cucumbers do. They can actually breathe through their rear end. They have this thing called a respiratory tree that connects to their backside and sits right next to their intestines. So when they suck in water from their behind, it goes into that respiratory tree, letting them absorb oxygen directly into their fluids. Plus, sea cucumbers are the janitors of the ocean. They munch on whatever gets stuck in the sand on the ocean floor. Once they've eaten, they manage to clean out the sand, leaving it nice and tidy after they do their business. As for the clean sand, the stunning white sand beaches in Hawaii are actually a product of parrotfish number 2. These fish munch on algae from rocks and dead corals, and while they're chomping away, they also grind up the leftover bits of coral in their bellies. When they're done, they move their bowels, and voila! It all comes out as beautiful sand. Not only do they play a vital role in keeping the coral reef ecosystem healthy, but they can churn out hundreds of pounds of this white sand every year. Marine animals are seriously impressive when it comes to holding their breath. Just look at sperm whales and elephant seals. They can stay underwater for a mind-blowing 2 hours. Then there's a Cuvier's beaked whale, which holds the crazy record at almost 4 hours underwater. When you compare that to the human record of 24 minutes and 37 seconds held by pro diver Budimir Shobat, it seems pretty insignificant. But what's the marine animal's secret that helps them excel humans this much? Unlike us, these sea creatures have a ton of hemoglobin and myoglobin in their blood and muscles, allowing them to store way more oxygen. When their oxygen runs low, myoglobin steps up and releases even more. Plus, they can tolerate higher levels of CO2, so they don't feel the need to breathe as quickly. There's even a study that found their myoglobin molecules have a unique charge that keeps them from sticking together, which boosts oxygen storage. And on top of all that, they can slow down their heart rate and restrict blood flow to hang out underwater even longer. Rumor has it that about 540 million years ago, a meteor loaded with frozen octopus eggs smashed into Earth. Sounds like a delirium, but some scientists are entertaining a very questionable idea that octopuses and their cephalopod buddies, like squids and cuttlefish, might actually have some extraterrestrial origins. The thing is, cephalopods have extraordinary DNA that doesn't look like any other DNA on our planet. They've got around 33,000 protein-coding genes in their genome, which is way more than what we humans have. A recent study suggests that their evolutionary story shows some odd traits that might hint at a connection to space, like they could be from some super far-off past, or even the future. The researchers went as far as to claim that modern octopuses could be the descendants of these frozen creatures that hitched a ride on comets and splashed down in our oceans. And why octopuses? Well, they really stand out in the animal kingdom. They can use different tools to build their own houses, and they can even solve everyday problems independently of their brain, as 2/3 of an octopus's neurons are in its arms. These traits seem to have just appeared out of nowhere during evolution. They even tossed around another quirky theory. What if an extraterrestrial virus crashed into early squid populations and gave them a crazy boost in evolution, turning them into the octopuses we know today? Anyways, these are just fun speculations without any hard proof. Now, this funky object is an animal, not a rock. It's called sand dollar. Just look at the shape of its shell. Once sand dollars are exposed to the sun, their shells lose their soft, spiny covering and become bleached white. Back in the day, beachcombers thought these shells looked a lot like big silver coins, kind of like the old Spanish dollar that was about the same size. But if you prefer, you can call them sand cakes instead. These quirky creatures have tiny spines on their surface, and they glide along the ocean floor. They use small tube feet that line the grooves on their underside to grab bits of food like plankton and algae, which they then send to their mouths. Inside, they have 5 triangular teeth that help them munch on their meals. In some Georgia folklore, sand dollars are said to represent coins lost by mermaids. Sand dollars have a unique talent for cloning themselves. They can do this for a bunch of reasons, like when a predator comes around. Some species of sand dollar larvae can actually split in half as a defense mechanism. It takes about 24 hours for them to clone themselves, and the new larvae end up being about 2/3 smaller than the original, which helps them hide from danger. Wait, is that a giant sea hot dog racing through the ocean? Sorta. Some scientists have joked that sperm whales seriously resemble enormous hot dogs. These massive creatures can take quick naps, standing up for about 10 to 15 minutes. They only sleep about 7% of the time, mostly between 6 p.m. and midnight. Sperm whales also have a cool ability to retract and extend their eyes, thanks to a thick retractor muscle around them, but they can't actually roll their eyes in their sockets. Plus, they have the most asymmetrical skull of any mammal out there. Oh, and let's not forget, they have the largest brain of any living creature, weighing in at over 9 pounds. Unlike us humans, if dolphins went into full-on snooze, they'd stop breathing and could drown. So they figured out a genius solution. They let only one side of their brain sleep at a time. This means one half stays awake to keep them breathing and watching out for any potential threats. When they snooze, they only close one eye. If their right brain is resting, their left eye is shut, and vice versa. This unique sleep style is called unihemispheric sleep, and it lets them recharge without ever fully losing awareness. On top of that, dolphins might be using corals and sponges like their own little pharmacies. Scientists have seen them rubbing their bodies against specific types of coral and sponges, suggesting they might be treating skin issues. They've even spotted dolphins lining up to take turns at these spots, using corals like Gorgonian coral Rumphella aggregata, leather coral, and some sponges. What's really fascinating is that researchers have analyzed these corals and found they contain compounds that could help with dolphin skin conditions, which can sometimes lead to infections and lesions. Now, the big question is figuring out exactly how each type of coral helps dolphins, and if it really boosts their health overall. Sea urchins aren't exactly the Usain Bolts of the ocean. They move slowly by crawling with their tube feet and occasionally give themselves a little push with their spines. These little guys have just 5 teeth, which they use like a beak to scrape algae off rocks, which I'm pretty sure is the ocean's version of an all-you-can-eat buffet. But since all that scraping wears their teeth down, they're in a never-ending dental replacement program. Scallops are the underwater equivalent of the world's most confused security cameras, sporting up to 200 tiny eyes on their shells. These eyes are high-tech. They can even adjust their pupils to light. Instead of working like ours, scallop eyes have a unique setup. Light goes through a pupil, lens, 2 retinas, and then hits a mirror made of guanine crystals that reflects it back. Scientists were puzzled about how they see since their main retina often gets blurry light. But it turns out, scallops can change their pupil size by about 50%. Just don't expect them to do it in a hurry, as it takes a few minutes.
Now here's something really neat about orcas. They're expert hunters, and they do it in groups called pods. A pod can consist of up to 40 orcas, forming a very effective hunting team. Interestingly, there are distinct types of pods, resident and transient. Resident pods are more into fish, while transient pods have a taste for marine mammals. But no matter what type of pod they belong to, all orcas have one thing in common: they are master collaborators. They work together using smart hunting techniques that are often compared to the teamwork of wolf packs. Almost 95% of jellyfish's body is made of water. For comparison, the human body is 60% water. It's probably not a surprise since jellyfish don't have a heart, blood, eyes, or brain. The other 5% of their body weight is proteins, muscles, and nerve cells. Jellyfish have been around for more than 500 million years. This makes them older than dinosaurs. These creatures haven't changed much, and today's jellyfish are pretty much like their ancestors. Electric eels have small eyes that are not so effective in environments with no light, so they mostly rely on their electric organs. Those consist of 6,000 cells. Eels use them to stow power, similar to batteries. These creatures use electricity like bats use their radars or dolphins their sonar. An eel can also produce enough electricity to power a panel of light bulbs. There's a small tropical archer fish that can learn to recognize human faces. This fish has an interesting ability to spit small jets of water from its mouth. Researchers showed the fish the image of two different faces placed side by side. One was unknown and the other was familiar. The fish was supposed to spit water at the familiar one. The creature took the right guess more than 80% of the time. There's such a thing as a sea unicorn. That's an animal called the narwhal. Its horn is actually a tooth that can grow up to 10 feet long. Manatees, also known as sea cows, are distant relatives of elephants. Their weight can go up to 1,000 pounds. These creatures are vegetarian and need to eat around 10% of their total weight on a daily basis. That's lots of sea salad. In some cases, manatees share space with alligators, but they get along pretty well. You can even find a photo from Florida where an alligator rides a manatee's back. Frogfish have special fins that help these creatures walk along the sand. They're very useful in shallow waters. A ghost pipefish is hard to see, but once you spot it, you're bound to get really surprised. Its head makes up over 40% of its body. Crabs don't feel like wasting time on such formalities as putting foods in their mouth. That's why they taste it with their feet, which is where their taste buds are. Marine iguanas are the only lizards on our planet that like spending time in the ocean, even though they mainly live on land. They're herbivores that feed in shallow waters and swim like snakes. Iguanas use their long claws to hold on to the bottom when they need to graze. Green turtles can cross over 1,400 miles when migrating. They try to find the perfect spot to lay their eggs. Penguins sort of fly when they're underwater, reaching a speed of 25 miles per hour. More than 5 million years ago, I've heard, I wasn't around then, deep-sea worms and humans had a common ancestor. So we still share 70% of our genes with these creatures, and with sea stars, squid, and octopuses. Now, octopuses are in fact incredibly old. The oldest known fossil belongs to an animal that lived almost 300 million years ago. FYI, this is before our dinosaur buddies roamed the Earth. Wait, there's more! Octopus arms have a mind of their own. That's because 2/3 of their neurons lie in their arms, not in their heads. This means that their arms can problem-solve how to open a shellfish, while their owner is worried about other stuff entirely. Talk about ninja-level multitasking. Oh, and like other animals, such as chimpanzees and dolphins, octopuses have proven to be good at maneuvering tools, like picking up old shells and using them as a temporary home. Now, of course, the most intelligent animals on our planet are humans, according to humans. But we don't seem to give pigs enough credit. Pigs are so smart they can play video games. No, not Minecraft. But in a recent academic study, scientists had 4 pigs play a joystick game. They had to manipulate the stick so that the moving ball would hit the wall and then they would get a treat. All 4 pigs did great in the test, which was surprising even to the scientists. Now, pigeons also aced an impressive test. They were trained to differentiate a Picasso painting from a Monet one, which they had no trouble learning. Then they were able to apply this knowledge, identifying works of art they had not previously seen, meaning they really understood the difference between each painter. Poor things are always seen as a nuisance. Now, if we placed kangaroos in an Animal's Most Amazing Ability contest, they'd win. It's mainly because they break the 4-legged rule. A special species of kangaroo, the red kangaroo, uses its tail to help propel it forward. Now, visually, it has 4 limbs, but in practice, it uses 5. They're biologically built to use their tail as a 5th limb, since it's packed with articulated vertebrae and thick muscles. Of course, it had to be an Australian animal. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey. Now meet this guy. Unlike what its name might suggest, the red panda is closer to a raccoon than it is to a giant panda. You'll find a lot of these cat-sized creatures in the Himalayan region, hopping from tree to tree and bundled together trying to keep warm in the harsh weather. They're gentle and friendly like their big panda cousins, and occasionally enjoy eating some bamboo sticks. And then there are bees. Compared to humans, bees' brains are the size of pinheads, yet they are capable of astounding things. Let's say a bee is running low on energy after a long search flight. This bee desperately needs a drop of honey in order to continue flying, but smartly enough, she doesn't need to go back to the hive to recharge. She can ask a fellow beehive mate for a drop of honey directly from this other bee's stomach and continue flying. This type of decentralized system allows them to build highly effective societies, one that bees don't need to push the queues in front of the honey cells, for example. Every year in the winter, great white sharks that live along the California coastline disappear. It feels as if they take a vacation for 30 to 40 days. The animals go to a point halfway between Hawaii and Mexico. They might do it to get some food, relax, or hang out with their buddies from other areas. The spot is now called the Whale Shark Cafe. Some types of sharks, like makos, whale sharks, or white sharks, breathe in a very specific way. It requires them to swim all the time. They also need to move quickly and with their mouth open. This way, the oxygen can enter and reach their gills. Sea sponges are some of the most primitive animals. They're immobile, don't have a mouth, eyes, bones, brain, heart, lungs, or any other organ whatsoever. And still, they're alive. There's such a thing as a sea unicorn. That's an animal called the narwhal. Its horn is actually a tooth that can grow up to 10 feet long. Manatees, also known as sea cows, are distant relatives of elephants. Their weight can go up to 1,000 pounds. These creatures are vegetarian and need to eat around 10% of their total weight on a daily basis. That's lots of sea salad. In some cases, manatees share space with alligators, but they get along pretty well. You can even find a photo from Florida where an alligator rides a manatee's back. Frogfish have special fins that help these creatures walk along the sand. They're very useful in shallow waters. A ghost pipefish is hard to see, but once you spot it, you're bound to get really surprised. Its head makes up over 40% of its body. Crabs don't feel like wasting time on such formalities as putting foods in their mouth. That's why they taste it with their feet, which is where their taste buds are. Marine iguanas are the only lizards on our planet that like spending time in the ocean, even though they mainly live on land. They're herbivores that feed in shallow waters and swim like snakes. There's something known as the orange cat behavior, and apparently it's not just a meme. So far, scientists have been able to understand that coat color is connected to a feline's gender. And since orange is an X chromosome, orange cats are usually males, like Garfield. The so-called orange cat behavior describes ginger cats as agents of chaos. Again, pretty much like Garfield. However, there haven't been any conclusive studies on whether coat color and cat behavior are truly linked. In terms of vision, mantis shrimps probably have the most psychedelic vision out of all animals. These funny-looking creatures have a whopping 16 varieties of photoreceptors, with 5 of them reserved for the ultraviolet or UV spectrum. Ultraviolet rays are really short wavelengths, which are invisible to humans. The thing science still doesn't understand is how exactly these mantis shrimp view the world around them. Sure, they can perceive a bunch of colors, but they can't necessarily distinguish all of these colors among themselves. It can be that they just see a lot of really vivid, really blurry colors, but we haven't figured out a way to check that out. Now, to say sloths are cute is an understatement. They may be one of the friendliest animals in the jungle, but there's more. If you look closely at their fur coat, you'll notice hints of green. These greeneries are actually tiny little algae that grow alongside sloths. They help sloths to camouflage better in the jungle, but they also nurture them. The little cracks inside a sloth's fur create the perfect environment for algae reproduction, and scientists have found species of algae that don't exist anywhere else in the world. They do get by with a little help from their friends. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey.
If you're a fan of Dr. Pimple Popper, you're probably freaking out right now, itching to squeeze out every little blackhead from those lip contours. But this is actually a hill formation that you can find in Garb, Sudan. Knowing that perhaps makes it all the more creepy because it looks like the crack in the middle is swallowing up everything around it. This black hole scenario brings to mind our next stop, Vostok Island. This eerie spot is a 59-acre coral atoll situated in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, about 400 miles northwest of Tahiti. If you check it out on Google Earth today, it looks like it's been totally blacked out, sparking all sorts of wild theories. People keep saying that this place is some top-secret base, or even a fictional island straight out of Lost. But what we see here is actually just a dense, dark green forest made up of Pisonia trees. Since nobody lives there and hardly anyone ever visits, the island is pretty much untouched by humans. This massive star, or mandala, is situated just outside Beatty, Nevada. It has got the internet all puzzled, with people trying to figure out if it's evidence of some kind of extraterrestrial activity. To add to the mystery, this spot is right by the Tonopah Test Range, which is also known as the famous Area 52. Despite its creepiness, it's probably just one of the thousands of crop circles that gained fame after Google Earth came along. This spiral formation right here is also located in Nevada, and it definitely looks like another chilling crop circle. But things get even stranger if you use the Street View option. As you zoom in closer and closer, you'll notice that it's made up of carefully arranged rocks. This labyrinth, so to speak, is part of an open-air museum situated in the ghost town of Rhyolite. And if that's not creepy enough, take a look around and you'll see dozens of eerie men in white cloaks. Despite their lifelike appearance, these silhouettes are actually statues from an installation created by a Belgian artist in the 80s. Even stranger than stumbling upon a large circle on the ground is finding a bunch of them. Our next location in Wyoming is filled with peculiar circle structures to the point where it's hard to count them all. During the 20th century, this U.S. state shifted from a farming economy to an industrial one, dominated by the extraction of oil, gas, and coal. So, these circles are likely remnants of a tank farm. I mean, places where oil storage tanks used to be located. If you want to avoid nightmares, I highly recommend not searching for the mausoleum of Emil Becker in Poland. If you happen to find it by using the Street View mode, prepare yourself to face an abandoned place with the most terrifying sculpture there is. Oh, the creeps. Keeping on the spooky side, let's head to an isolated corner of Kazakhstan, where you can find a pentagram etched into the Earth's surface. This formation is huge, measuring roughly 1,200 feet in diameter. Before you jump to conclusions about this formation being related to some kind of underworld deity worship, it's worth noting that the pentagram actually turns out to be the outline of a park designed in the shape of a star. The star shape is marked by roadways, which are now lined with trees, making the star shape even more distinct in aerial photos. You can spot this peculiar symbol from quite a distance. At first glance, it might even resemble an otherworldly alphabet, as if a highly intelligent civilization is trying to send us an alert message. But this mystery is already solved. We are in De Hoge Veluwe, a Dutch national park located in the province of Gelderland. And these lines are actually part of the park's logo. Search for these coordinates to find what looks like a land formation straight out of an extraterrestrial landscape, or perhaps a set from Avatar. This place, located in Inner Mongolia, China, is believed to be a granite mine. But it's a bit of a mystery why it has such a striking blue tone on Google Earth. If you check it out on Microsoft Bing Maps, for example, the same location appears in a much more natural tone. In the Australian outback lies a massive geoglyph known as the Maori Man. Discovered in the late 90s, it appears to represent an indigenous Australian man hunting with a boomerang or stick. The figure stretches for more than 2 miles in length and about 1.6 miles wide. It has deep furrows carved into the ground, which adds to the complexity of its formation and origin. Despite efforts to uncover its purpose, its origin is still a mystery. This is Desert Breath, located in the Sahara. Like many things you have seen in this video, this formation also sparks speculation about it being created by extraterrestrial beings. But a quick Google search clears up that mystery. It turns out this is an art installation created by a group of 3 Greek artists back in 1997. They went all out, moving around a whopping 280,000 square feet of sand and even creating a large pool in the middle of it. Egypt still holds many mysteries, and you can explore them yourself with Google Earth. That's how some people stumbled upon this striking triangular-shaped plateau and immediately jumped to the conclusion that they discovered a hidden pyramid. However, experts quickly dashed their hopes. They believe there's no plausible explanation for a pyramid to exist in this area, located 8 miles west of the Nile Valley edge in Upper Egypt. This discovery is likely nothing more than a hill that has suffered the effects of erosion, combined with a heavy dose of wishful thinking. In some cases, nature itself is responsible for creating frightening sculptures, like the Badlands Guardian in Alberta, Canada. If you look at it from above, you'll notice not 1, but 2 human heads emerging from the landscape. These gigantic beings were sculpted by rainwater erosion on layers of clay-rich soil. Ironically, additional human-made structures give the impression that this one is wearing wired headphones. It seems that deserts are a prime spot for discovering strange images on Google Earth. So our next stop is China. In the Gobi Desert, you'll come across zigzagging white lines that look kind of random. The first challenge for armchair experts was figuring out what these structures were made of, as it's hard to tell if they're painted on or dug into the landscape. There's still a lot of speculation about it on the internet. But the most plausible explanation is that this structure is used for calibrating satellites. This way, satellite cameras can focus on these large grids to orient themselves in space. Check out this intact plane that seems to have sunk beneath the ocean off the coast of Crooked Island, Bahamas. Some viral videos claim it's a crashed plane belonging to the infamous Pablo Escobar. The truth is that something lying on the bottom of the ocean can't be that visible, so it's more likely that it's a plane that was actually flying when Google captured these images. However, there is a strong belief that Pablo Escobar did have a plane that crashed nearby, but it was in another part of the Bahamas known as Norman's Cay. You can still spot it in shallow turquoise waters. Just search for Norman's Cay sunken plane, and there it is. If you're convinced that extraterrestrials are already among us, then go ahead and type in these coordinates on Google Earth. Explore the area using Street View, and wow, what is it? Of course, we're not talking about visitors from other planets, but this shadow of a gigantic creature still gives me the creeps. Turns out, it's just a person lugging around one of those 360-degree Street View cameras tucked away in a trekker backpack. So hey, if you take a good look around Google Earth, you might stumble upon more of these elongated necked beings walking around the globe. There's a creature somewhere deep in the ocean looking for prey that would make Dracula himself proud. It's been around since before even the dinosaurs walked the earth. It has no bones or jaw, but it doesn't stop this underwater vampire from hunting. The name of this eel-like parasite is the Pacific lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating lamprey flesh. He got sick every time he'd have the original gooey fish. but the lack of bones and the fact that this lamprey tastes like slow-cooked beefsteak made the royal fall in love with the fish once and for all. The product of this love was a chill in his aged body, some heavy sweating, and some other scary symptoms, which eventually took his life and interrupted his 35-year reign. The lamprey is way better at surviving, as it lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. There are around 40 living species of lampreys still thriving across the world. The Pacific lamprey is just one of them. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones, and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on the top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a sucker mouth surrounded by teeth. It's perfect for latching onto prey and sipping up body fluids like underwater vampires. Once they pick a victim, they suction it, making a seal that's almost impossible to break. Scientists believe the Pacific lampreys don't munch on flesh. Female lampreys lay up to 200,000 eggs in nests that stay in fresh water for 3 to 4 weeks. Once the larvae hatch, they burrow into sediment and stay under the sand for up to a decade. When they hit their teenage years, these miniature Draculas re-emerge and migrate from freshwater all the way to the Pacific Ocean. This journey isn't the easiest, and it takes some changes to its appearance and physiology to adapt to a huge change in salinity. After several years, they go back to freshwater to reproduce. Pacific lampreys can use chemical clues released by their larval migrating pals to find their way. They can travel hundreds of miles inland to find the perfect spot for spawning and rearing. It's not always the same place they spawned in. Many species of birds, mammals, and other fish can appreciate the fatty flesh of lamprey. This makes them some of the most valuable players in freshwater and marine ecosystems. Another lamprey type, the sea lamprey, is native to the Atlantic Ocean. It's not that dangerous when it's at home, but once it gets to the Great Lakes, it becomes a real threat to the 4 local native species of lamprey. The sea lamprey is up to 4 times bigger than the lake species. It has unlimited food and spawning grounds, and no natural predators here, so it becomes cocky. It secretes an enzyme that doesn't let the blood clot. Once it attaches to some unsuspecting fish, it spends the next several months feeding off of it. And even if the fish shakes the lamprey off, it doesn't have long to live because the mark the predator leaves behind. Sea lampreys aren't interested in humans, but can accidentally latch onto a swimmer. It won't be fatal, but it's not the most pleasant sensation, and you need to get the spot of the impact disinfected. The Australian box jellyfish looks harmless, but it's considered the most venomous marine animal. Unlike other kinds of jellyfish that float with the current rather than swim, this creature can reach an impressive speed and choose its own direction. It has tentacles covered with tiny darts loaded with poison. People and animals that get unlucky enough to meet with those tentacles face some scary and sometimes even fatal consequences in a matter of minutes. Before you decide to never revisit the ocean, you should know that only a few out of around 50 existing species of box jellyfish have venom that is lethal to humans. There are some not-so-dangerous species living in warm coastal waters worldwide. And the most dangerous ones are in the Indo-Pacific region and northern Australia. A blue-ringed octopus spots a signature psychedelic color and the ability to take away your life. This cute-looking sea monster likes to spend its time in the soft, sandy bottom or shallow tide pools and coral reefs. It normally hides in underwater crevices, among shells or debris. If you disturb it, the octopus will activate its tiny color-changing organs and demonstrate its blue rings as a warning signal. The next step will be releasing a venom 1,000 times more powerful than cyanide. This venom is more toxic than that of land mammals. The octopus normally uses it to hunt crabs, shrimp, and small fish by pecking them with its beak and paralyzing them. There is no known antidote for the venom, so if you ever see this sea creature, the best you can do is to stay away from it. It bites without any pain, so you might notice when it's too late. The good news is that it's not aggressive and won't go after you unless it's cornered. The reef stonefish are masters of disguise in the underwater world that camouflage themselves on rocks, coral reefs, or just blend into the seabed. They thrive throughout tropical marine waters of the Indo-Pacific. Their invisibility superpower makes them especially dangerous to their prospective victims they ambush and swallow whole. If someone happens to disturb them, their 13 defensive dorsal spines stand on end and deliver a powerful venom punch. They say stonefish stings are extra painful and lead to scary consequences within minutes. They're called the most venomous fish in the world. If you don't do anything about it, the impact can be lethal. If you ever go diving in the Pacific Ocean, be careful not to pick up a cone snail from the seafloor. It has a beautiful shell made of brown, black, or white patterns. Like most other snails, it's slow, but it has a complicated system of seeking out prey. It likes to snack on fish, marine worms, or even other snails. Once a cone snail senses food is near, it activates a sharp proboscis, or a needle-like protrusion from its mouth. The attack is swift and super potent. The victim doesn't even have time to realize what happened to them. Once it's completely incapable of moving, the cone snail swallows it whole. Humans aren't on its menu, but it can still release the venom if someone steps on it or disturbs it. The proboscis can even penetrate gloves. Luckily, only several out of over 700 species of cone snails can take a human's life. But since there's no antivenom, you better not risk it. All 52 known species of sea snakes living mostly in the warm tropical waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans are venomous. The beaked sea snake even has the title of one of the world's most venomous serpents, but it's one of the few kinds that can pose a real threat to humans. Sea snakes prefer a peaceful coexistence and would rather slither away than engage in any confrontations. If you ever see them in the water, staying calm and moving slowly will save your life. Sea snake bites, although almost painless at the moment, can have varying degrees of impact. Some may only cause mild symptoms, while others can lead to severe outcomes. Most bite reports come from accidental encounters, like someone freeing them from nets or unsuspecting beachgoers stepping on them. Blue dragons rarely grow larger than the size of a grape. They like to swim belly up, so their brightest blues blend in with the ocean waters. And the silver front faces down and camouflages with the darker seabed. Blue dragons feed on another dangerous sea creature and store up their stinging cells. Their venom lives on even after the fish itself is no longer alive. That's why you should be extra careful and never pick up or step on them on the beach.
Scientists and geologists are out there in the vast ocean, towing these trusty devices, also known as streamer cables. They drop these cables about 16 to 65 feet deep, with each stretching over 20,000 feet long. Now you can imagine that this whole setup creates quite a commotion underwater, attracting all sorts of curious creatures. And guess who shows up for the party? Sharks. Yep, these toothy pals are drawn to the magnetic fields of the streamer cables and sometimes mistake them for a chewy snack. Now, before you start thinking that sharks have a personal vendetta against these cables, let me tell you something. This is not a new problem. It's been going on since the 1980s. Even big players like Google have faced these underwater cable conundrums. They had to surround these internet cables with a fancy material to protect them from shark teeth. I mean, can you imagine a shark causing a delay in your internet browsing? That's one hungry predator with a serious grudge against technology. So, why exactly are sharks so keen on these cables? Well, no one knows for sure. Some scientists think it's because sharks have a thing for electromagnetic fields and get curious. Others believe they just have a thing for anything cable-shaped. It's not all sharks that cause such problems, but which of them are the troublemakers in this aquatic tale? Well, it depends on the depth of the cables. For example, when it comes to a particular depth, the bull sharks seem to be the mischief makers. These bad boys have solid gray physiques and short snouts. They're like the bullies of the underwater neighborhood, causing trouble wherever they go. Bull sharks are widely found in tropical and warm waters around the world, and they seem to have a knack for seeking out these streamer cables. Now I know what you're thinking. Did these scientists really catch a group of bull sharks and make them bite cables just for science? Nope, they're way too clever for that. Instead, they used a 3D scan of an authentic bull shark jaw to create a computer model. Talk about high tech. They simulated shark attacks on the cables, measuring the impact and compression forces. It turns out that a shark can really do a number on those cables. But here's the kicker. The strength of the cables depends on how fast the shark is swimming when it decides to take a chomp. So if you see a shark cruising by at top speed, you better watch out for those cables. But wait. We can't blame the poor sharks entirely for the fate of these underwater cables. A 2009 report points out that a lot of fish have a considerable history of nibbling on cables. It's like a buffet for these underwater creatures. Barracudas, sharks from shallow and deep waters, and even some other sneaky culprits have been identified as cable biters. They just can't resist sinking their teeth into the cable wrapping, which then lets the power conductor hang out with the seawater. It's a recipe for cable failure. Still curious about the fascinating world of cable installation? Did you know that more than over 90% of international data takes a watery journey? These cables, which are like underwater highways, stretch for hundreds of thousands of miles beneath the ocean's surface, reaching depths as deep as the size of Mount Everest. Now, you might be wondering how these cables are placed. Well, it's not as simple as dropping wires in the water like in the cartoons. In fact, it requires some careful planning and specialized boats called cable layers. These brave boats meticulously run the cables across the flat surfaces of the ocean floor, making sure to steer clear of all obstacles that Mother Nature throws their way. When it comes to cable sizes, the shallow water cables are about as thick as a soda can. On the other hand, deep water cables are way smaller, measuring up to the size of a marker. Why the difference, you ask? Well, it's all about vulnerability. Way down there, 8,000 feet below sea level, there isn't much action going on. Therefore, these deep-sea cables don't need as much shielding wire for protection. They're like the skinny swimmers of the cable world, gliding through the depths with ease. But let's not forget about the installation costs. Brace yourself, because placing a cable across the vast expanse of the ocean is no bargain. We're talking about millions of dollars. Now, the actual price may vary depending on factors like the total length of the cable and its destination. But trust me, it's definitely not pocket change. Installing shallow water cables is quite the spectacle. They're carefully stuffed beneath the ocean floor using high-pressure water jets. It's like giving these cables a cozy underground home, shielding them from the whims of the ocean currents. So, while cable installation may be slow, and, let's face it, a bit expensive, it's truly a remarkable feat of engineering. The underwater world is a complex and delicate ecosystem, and the cable layers take great care to ensure that their installations don't disrupt the marine life and habitats that call the ocean home. It's a balancing act between technological progress and oceanic conservation, and they're doing a pretty good job at it. Whenever you browse the internet, remember that your cat videos and funny memes might just be zipping through those submarine cables deep beneath the waves. But burying cables safely underwater isn't actually a modern idea, you know. Hold on tight because we're going on a time-traveling adventure back to the mid-19th century. Picture this. It's 1854, and something groundbreaking is about to happen. The installation of the very first transatlantic telegraph cable begins, linking the distant shores of Ireland and Newfoundland. Now, before you roll your eyes and say, "Old news, buddy," let's remember that this was a pretty big deal back then. Fast forward 4 years, and the moment of truth arrives. The first transmission is sent through the cable, carrying a message that goes something like this. Laws. White House received 5-minute signal. Coil signals too weak to relay. Try drive slow and regular. I have put intermediate pulley. Reply by coils. Okay. Maybe not the most exhilarating message ever sent. But hey, they were just getting started. Now, let's put ourselves in the shoes of those remarkable folks involved in this undersea endeavor. Imagine being the lead electrician of the Atlantic Telegraph Company, also known as White House, in the message. He must have been quite the electrician extraordinaire. To put things into perspective, while our cable pioneers were busy laying the groundwork for transatlantic communication, the world outside was bustling with activity. Charles Dickens, that literary genius, was still crafting his timeless novels. Meanwhile, a little settlement named Dallas was officially incorporated in the vast state of Texas. It's pretty incredible to think about how far we've come since then, with our high-speed internet and seamless global communication. Could you really take down the internet by simply going underwater with a pair of wire cutters? Well, technically, yes. You'll need to be all geared up, wearing your snazzy scuba suit and holding a pair of trusty wire cutters. You can also add a mischievous grin on your face just to create the right ambiance, don't you agree? Now, let's get serious. Cutting through those super important submarine communications cables is no easy task. They carry thousands of seriously dangerous volts. But here's the deal. Someone actually did it in Egypt back in 2013. A group of daring individuals wearing their sleek wetsuits and equipped with wire cutters decided to give it a go. Their target? The Southeast Asia Middle East West, Europe E4 cable. A whopping 500-mile lifeline that connects 3 continents. As soon as those mischievous cable cutters did their thing, chaos ensued. Internet speeds in Egypt took a nosedive, plummeting by a staggering 60%. Can you imagine the frustration of trying to load a cute puppy video and having to wait for ages? But hey, let's keep things lighthearted here. The internet, like a phoenix, rose from the ashes once the cable was repaired. Speeds were restored, and everyone could once again binge-watch their favorite shows and indulge in endless rounds of online gaming.
There are plenty of fish in the sea. Some of them look totally like Nemo or Dory. Then there's the butterfly fish and fancy guppy, which is indeed really fancy. And then there's... what on earth is that? I would definitely not pay for a diving experience to see this guy. The anglerfish has the unofficial title of the ugliest animal in the world, but I wouldn't dare to break that news to it. There are more than 200 species of anglerfish currently swimming somewhere in the gloomy depths of the Atlantic and Antarctic oceans, up to a mile below the surface. Some of them prefer different living conditions, the shallow tropical environments. Different kinds of anglerfish vary in shape and size, from the famous black sea devil to frogfish, monkfish, footballfish, goosefish, batfish, and sea toad. The larger ones can be half as long as a full-sized bed, but most are less than a foot long. Since the choice of meals where these guys live isn't that huge, they had to come up with a unique hunting strategy. They don't waste their priceless life energy on following prospective prey. Instead, they use a piece of dorsal spine that sticks above their mouths like a fishing pole, hence the name of the fish. There's a sac of bioluminescent bacteria that glows brightly in the dark at the end of that rod. The light lures prey, and all the anglerfish has to do is wait, and then enjoy its lunch delivered right to its mouth. Their bodies are pliable and huge, so they can easily swallow prey twice their size. Deep-sea anglerfish eat whatever they can find. Species that live in more shallow water aren't picky either, and can eat anything from shrimp to snails and small fish. Only female anglerfish have the cool fishing rod feature though. So what about their males? Finding a soulmate deep under the sea isn't that easy. I mean, literally, there's no light down there. Plus, there are frigid temperatures and low oxygen levels. Anglerfish can't afford to go on many dates in those conditions, so they mate for life. And before you go aw about it, I have to tell you, they do it in quite a special way. Male anglerfish are much smaller than their ladies. The contrast is so striking that when researchers first got interested in their love life, they thought those males were actually the offspring, or larvae, hanging out next to their moms. Certain anglerfish male species have receptors that alert them that there's a female nearby. After they mate, the male bites into his woman and stays attached to her head, belly, near her tail, and other areas he can access. While they morph together forever, the female fish gets the male's cells, DNA, and reproductive organs, but loses her immune response cells. The male gets free permanent housing and nutrition. Given the current real estate prices, it sounds like a dream. But that accommodation is shared by up to 8 males, and they can't move out if they ever feel like it. You're unlikely to meet this deep-sea fish in real life, but if you meet an anglerfish in your favorite video game, remember that you can easily outswim it and make it kinder to you with tranquilizing arrows. Once you befriend it, the anglerfish can be your scout and help you discover new areas with its bioluminescent pods. Back in the real world, down in the twilight zone of the ocean, about 650 to 3,300 feet down, the anglerfish isn't the only creature you're lucky you'll probably never meet. Many of the locals look like they come straight out of science fiction or horror movies, but that's because they had to adapt to this dark, deep world. I did my best to get you prepared for the creatures you're going to meet, starting with the common fangtooth. They spend most of their lives deep down, but at night, they move toward the surface to snack. These guys are more active than most other deep-sea dwellers. They don't wait for food to come their way, but actually follow it, and then get it with their long, hungry teeth. They don't have a built-in light bulb like the anglerfish, so they've developed a great sense of smell and use as much sunlight as they can get there in the depth to get around. Sometimes, even the shadow of a passing by prospective prey is enough for them to switch to action mode. And though they don't look too charming, they're completely harmless to humans if you ever run into one of these guys. Stoplight Loosejaw sounds like a great name for an alternative band, but it's actually another deep-sea resident with sneaky hunting habits. It has special light-producing photophores under each eye. They emit green and red light like a stoplight, hence the name of the fish. Unlike other fish, these guys hardly ever leave the twilight and midnight zones. Their lower jaw is a quarter of the total body length, and the stoplight keeps it open all the time, hoping to get some lunch. It looks like a ferocious predator, but mostly prefers zooplankton with an occasional dessert of shrimp, krill, and fish. I'm sure you didn't expect to meet a hybrid of an eel and a bird, but here it is! The slender snipe eel has a beak, much like that of a bird, with curving tips. The beak is equipped with tiny hooked teeth that the eels use to catch the antennae of delicious shrimp. And it sure is slender, stretching up to 5 feet and weighing only a few ounces. Scientists don't know all of this guy's secrets, since it's pretty tricky to study in their natural habitat. But it looks like they only produce offspring once in a lifetime, and then pass away. Glass squids like to take it easy in life and literally go with the flow. They're filled with a solution which is lighter than water, so they don't have to make any effort to move around the deep sea looking for food and partners. These creatures are transparent, so they blend into any landscape and don't even cast a shadow while moving. Talk about a great survival tactic. If danger finds it anyway, it can transform into a lumpy ball, pushing its head and tentacles into its mantle cavity. It can also release ink into the mantle and go from transparent to black. The same ink can protect it against hungry whales and seabirds. Another tactic they use to scare off predators is to activate their light-emitting organs around their eyes. I'm getting hungry. Maybe I can snack on this sea cucumber. Ouch, it's moving! So I guess it doesn't belong in a salad after all. These soft-bodied fellows live in all parts of the ocean, from shallow waters to the deep underwater world. Most of them slowly move around with their tiny feet, but some crawl around by flexing their bodies. Sea cucumbers can shed their internal organs when there's a predator approaching. Those sticky organs distract the intruder, and the happy cucumber moves on and just grows the organs back. What's that glistening in the distance? Looks like someone dropped gems in the water. That's a sea sapphire, also known as the most beautiful animal you've never seen. Some males of this type of copepod can change color from deep blue to purple, red, or gold. 1 second later, it's gone. And it's back, shimmering bright. The secret to this magic is that their bodies are transparent and reflect light differently at certain angles. It looks like it's their way of communicating between each other and attracting mates. Female sea sapphires don't have the same superpower, but their eyes are bigger compared to males, probably to spot them from a distance. Males roam wild and free, and their ladies stay in the crystal palaces of strange barrel-shaped jellies called salps.
Not a lot of people have heard of this mysterious body of water named after famous English explorer Sir Francis Drake. Even though Drake himself never sailed through these waters, one of his ships did pass near this location and discovered a connection between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. That's how the area got named the Drake Passage in 1578. Soon enough, the passage became known for some mysterious disappearances. It got the reputation of being the roughest and most unpredictable stretch of water in the world. It's now known for its strong winds and rough seas, with waves that can reach up to 60 feet in height. The passage also has powerful currents with speeds never seen before. Does it sound like a good start to an adventure book? Sure, it doesn't make the place any less real. If you ever decide to travel between the southern tip of South America and the southern tip of the Antarctic Peninsula, you will come across the infamous Drake Passage. We call this place the Drake Passage today, but locals still believe it should be named after Spanish explorer Francisco de Oces. He was a Spanish navigator who, in 1525, led the first known European expedition to navigate the Drake Passage. The trip was part of an attempt of Spain to find a new route to the Spice Islands in the East Indies. Oces and his two ships, the San Lesmes and the Santiago, sailed through the Strait of Magellan and into the Drake Passage, where they encountered treacherous weather and rough seas. Despite the difficulties, they successfully navigated the passage and became the first Europeans known to have done so. However, the expedition failed to find a new trade route, and the crew returned to Spain with no significant discoveries. Some years later, in 1616, another ship captained by Dutch navigator Willem Schouten made one of the most successful voyages through the Drake Passage. Despite the difficulties of navigating the often turbulent seas, eventually, the Drake Passage became an important part of international trade routes in the 19th and early 20th centuries. But this dangerous area holds many secrets. The record of one of the most famous events that happened here takes us back to the year 1914. During that time, a British explorer named Shackleton wanted to travel to Antarctica with 27 men split between two ships. Those were named the Endurance and the Aurora. The explorers wanted to check out two routes that reached the continent. But in 1915, the Endurance got stuck in ice while crossing the Drake Passage and was slowly crushed. Shackleton and his crew had to leave the ship and could only gather some personal belongings. The Endurance eventually sank, and the crew had to survive on ice for a while. The mission changed from exploring to surviving, and only in 1916 all the men were rescued. The Aurora suffered a similar fate. It also got stuck in ice, and 3 men were lost at sea before the rest of the crew was rescued in 1917. For many years, the ship Endurance was thought to have been lost forever. But in 2022, a group of specialists went on a trip to find it. They left from Cape Town, South Africa on February 5th. The leader of the group said it was most likely the most difficult shipwreck search in history. They used special equipment to find the ship under the water and then used a special underwater camera to take a closer look. The members of the team were sure they had found the Endurance because it was in a place where very few ships had ever been. Despite being 10,000 feet underwater, the Endurance didn't look so shabby. It was actually pretty well preserved for a ship that had been underwater for more than 100 years. The explorers were still even able to see the word Endurance written on it. But it's not just ships that have a hard time with the Drake Passage. A plane with 38 people on board seemed to have disappeared over the Drake Passage in 2019, according to the Chilean authorities. It's believed it hit the icy and rough waters of the passage. Rescuers used ships, planes, and satellites to search for the missing plane and its passengers in the area where it had last sent messages. But the harsh conditions of the Drake Passage made the search very difficult. The exact location where the accident had happened was eventually found, but there were no survivors. The Viking Polaris is another of those ships that got damaged in the passage, even though it was designed for tough conditions. It was faster than most ships and more stable because of special equipment that kept it balanced. One night, back in 2022, the waves were indeed big, but the ship seemed to be doing well in the rough weather. But then, on its way back to port in Ushuaia, Argentina, a rogue wave suddenly hit the ship without warning. People on board felt like they had been hit by an iceberg. Rogue waves are much taller than other waves around them, and they're very unpredictable. Scientists still don't know exactly why they occur. When this rogue wave hit the Viking Polaris ship, it immediately broke windows on the second deck. Some people on board were hurt, but thankfully, most of them had been properly trained before boarding the ship and knew what they had to do in case of an emergency. The crew was also very good at helping the passengers. Most of them even claimed later that they would board the ship for the second time, despite such an unexpected experience. The boat eventually made it to the port without suffering further damage. What makes this region so hard to cross, though? For starters, the Drake Passage is a wide and deep area of water. It's about 500 miles wide and has a depth of 15,000 feet. Even the most experienced sailors who cross the passage every year say it can be dangerous, unpredictable, and even scary at times. And that's even considering the modern technologies we have today. The area is a mix of warm and cold temperatures, which can result in ravishing storms. Strong winds from the west push the water from the Pacific Ocean into the passage, creating waves and swells that can reach up to 30 feet or more. If accidents happen here, things can get ugly faster than anywhere else. The Drake Passage is a part of the ocean where the water is very cold and has strong currents. The bottom of the ocean there is also not stable, making it harder to find things like a plane or a ship. These days, we have modern technology that helps us feel safe, even when we're passing through rough seas. However, if you are planning to travel by boat to Antarctica, make sure you're ready for the rough sea in the Drake Passage, and for feeling a little uneasy. This can happen even to the most experienced of people when the waters are rough, but it's especially tough if it's your first time. Some people bring remedies to avoid feeling sick, like ginger gum or scented wristbands. Others find it helpful to look at the horizon. Test things out to see what works for you. Once you arrive at the Drake Passage, you'll be surprised to see that lots of different animals live there. You can see many types of dolphins, birds, whales, and penguins. The water in the Drake Passage is also good for small animals like plankton, krill, which bigger animals such as whales, penguins, and seals generally have on their daily menus. As you get closer to Antarctica, watch out for the South Shetland Islands. These might be the first pieces of land you'll see. They're also located in the Antarctic Peninsula and were first discovered in 1819 by British explorer William Smith. The South Shetland Islands are home to severe active volcanoes, including Deception Island and Mount Fenton. The islands are also where you can find a number of endemic species, including the South Shetland Islands Gentoo penguin, which is only found on this piece of land.
Most of the ocean is still shrouded in mystery, whether we're talking about dark corners or creatures that are hiding in the depths. But sometimes it gives us a peek into scary things it hides in its cold, dark depths. Like when you hear on the news that there are some deep-sea creatures washed ashore after a powerful storm once again. Some just look weird, while others are real monsters that live at depths of more than 3,300 feet. The coldest and deepest parts of the ocean have created one specific phenomenon called gigantism. So, sea spiders, squids, worms, and many other animals, mostly invertebrates, or creatures without backbones, they're all way bigger and scarier than the versions we see in the more shallow areas. In the Pacific depths, you can see a sea sponge as large as a minivan. Or what about the colossal squid that lives in subantarctic waters and is nearly 14 times longer than the arrow squid, a type that mostly lives in New Zealand? Researchers found many of these underwater monsters in the abyssal zone of the ocean. Back in 2021, the researchers showed images of the giant phantom jelly. It was at a depth of 3,200 feet. Its tentacles were 33 feet long. Wow, I wouldn't like to face that one on the beach. It probably eats only small fish and plankton, but it can swim to depths of more than 21,900 feet. And down there, this giant jelly doesn't have enough food. How does it survive then? Scientists haven't figured it out yet. And there are even more questions related to the giant squid, the biggest one ever found. This monster is 43 feet long, with a weight of nearly a ton. Imagine if those tentacles would grab your car, or something like that. They would smash it like it was a toy. There's no light in the abyssal zone, Sun rays just can't penetrate that deep, so there's no algae or underwater plants there. Local animals mostly eat snow. Marine snow is not like the regular one you build a snowman with. It consists of any small flakes or remains that fall from the surface of the ocean. Maybe even some leftovers that animals up there couldn't eat. So it's not much, but apparently it's enough for very large creatures that hide deep down there, like giant squids. Squids that generally live at such depths don't bother going after their prey. They just wait until the poor animal swims right up to their long tentacles and falls into a trap. It may not be the best method ever, because not many animals will even swim into these dark, cold parts, but it's the method that saves energy. A giant squid eats only 1 ounce of fish daily, which is approximately 45 calories. That's nearly 50 times fewer calories than an average person should eat per day. So when a squid gets 1 fish, it saves it for a couple of days. I hope giant squids won't get the idea to go to the surface and look for food when there's not enough of it in the abyssal zone. And I hope even more that giant Greenland sharks won't get that same idea. You can find them at depths of up to 7,200 feet. They're twice as slow as we usually walk. They swim at a speed of 1.12 feet per second. Their slowness is part of the energy-saving mechanism that creatures down there need to survive. But they can speed up in the form of short bursts when they need to catch prey. But they kinda change their diet from predator to scavenger, considering their environment. There will be more leftovers falling from the surface than animals to go after. Greenland sharks grow just 0.4 inches per year, and they're mostly 20 feet long, which means they live for a very long time, sometimes up to 400 years. They also have a slow metabolism, and that's one of the main factors for their long life, too. Greenland sharks like to spend their time in cold waters. They're adapted to that, since their tissues have specific chemical compounds that prevent the forming of ice crystals all over their body. That means they have some sort of natural antifreeze. So what makes them so big? Scientists are still not sure, but some theories try to explain it. There's this thing called Kleiber's rule that says bigger animals tend to be more efficient. Just take a small fish and compare it to a whale with a mass hundreds of times bigger. The whale has a greater metabolism. It conserves energy more efficiently and loses less of it to the surroundings through heat. Moving on, bigger animals can ingest bigger prey. They're more likely to go through tough issues in their environment or defend themselves from predators going after them. Also, the body gets bigger when temperatures are lower. The Greenland shark is a perfect example. So are giant sea spiders. Sea spiders are generally common, and you find some very small ones at 0.04 inches. But in deeper parts of the Antarctic, they become 3-foot-long giants. They grow so big because the cold water has more oxygen. That way, more of it diffuses into the animal's body, and that allows it to grow bigger. Yeah, both as a creature and a nightmare. And how about this giant tube worm? Researchers found it accidentally while they were exploring the mysteries of the Pacific Ocean floor. They stumbled upon unusual hydrothermal vents. Volcanic heat is a thing that gets them going. As water seeps down through faults or cracks in the rock, these vents change their direction. When the water gets out of the vent, it's rich in different minerals and chemicals. Most animals wouldn't survive being around this toxic soup of chemicals, but not these tube worms. They came as a true surprise, because not only are they not bothered by these toxic vents and the almost boiling temperature of the water, but they developed entire ecosystems there. They're unique because they don't need sunlight to survive. Instead, small bacteria are their main source of energy. That bacteria gets their energy directly from these toxic chemicals. So it's not photosynthesis, but a process called chemosynthesis. And these tube worms don't have mouths. These bacteria live inside them. Strange story, huh? Plus, these scary worms reach up to 8 feet. Giant isopods are no better either. They lurk at the depths of the ocean of 1,640 feet or more below, far away from the sunlight, looking like some monstrous wood lice. They spend most of their time on the seabed, hoping to find some food falling from higher levels of the ocean. Check out their small hooked claws at the ends of their legs. Isopods use them to remain more stable while moving around the ocean floor. Since there's no light, they have long antennae that help them feel their way around. These sensory antennas are about half the length of their body. Giant isopods have pretty big eyes compared to their body size, too. They can grow over 12 inches from head to tail. And these fellas are really patient. Remember how we said animals down there rarely get food? Sometimes they need to wait for years to get a proper meal. That's why their metabolism is amazingly slow.
5 years later.
They can go for 5 years without eating anything. Imagine that. I get hungry just talking about this. In 2006, a biologist did research to compare the differences between the shallows and the deep sea regions. He realized the deep sea mirrors the island rule. First, isolated parts of land develop biodiversity you won't find anywhere else. Second, small-bodied life there grows much bigger when it's isolated, compared to life on large land masses. Resources are limited, but also competition and predators. And we don't know much about these deep-sea creatures. It's too expensive and too complicated to carry out such research. So we'll just wait for more raging storms to show us at least part of the monstrous world cold ocean depths hide.
450 million years ago, no, I wasn't around then, the sea level was higher, coral reefs started to form, the climate on our planet was stable and warm, not even dinosaurs were around yet. The time when bony and jawed fish we know as sharks appeared. They've been dominating the oceans and making other marine creatures flee in fear ever since. Many of them, like great white sharks, have evolved and adjusted to life in the open ocean as hunters with a pretty high position in the food chain. They're less diverse today than before. One of the reasons is the asteroid strike from the age of dinosaurs. After it reduced the number of shark species, only smaller and deep-water kinds that ate primarily fish survived. They started getting bigger over time. Near the surface, sharks such as makos or great white ones develop faster movements and are somewhat between gray and blue to blend in with their surroundings. The epaulet shark can even walk on the land. It can't take a walk on the beach because it can't breathe outside of the water, but it lives on coral flats in shallow tropical waters, so it can walk in kind of a crawling motion. But deep down below, there are mysterious, alien-looking, often huge shark species that didn't come to the surface, which is why they didn't need to adjust to the new environment and different conditions. They haven't changed a lot through time, so they're some living fossils. These creatures mostly don't have 5 gill slits, the most common number, but 6 or 7. It's because there's less oxygen the deeper you go in the ocean, so they need more gill slits. Sharks on the surface evolved to have fewer gill slits. 6-gill sharks are the most primitive sharks we have today. Their skeletons are like those of ancient extinct sharks, and they can survive only in very deep waters. Like cats, sharks have a layer of reflective cells placed inside their eyes, which helps them see better in the dark, deep sea or cloudy waters. Sharks on the surface have big eyes because they evolved to hunt in the sunlight, so they tend to rely on their vision. Those that live in shallow waters have small eyes, so they can protect themselves from the sand. Like some other deep-sea creatures, 6-gill sharks also have bigger eyes to take in as much light as possible. They have more light-sensing rods, but don't distinguish colors that well. In the ocean's twilight zone, with the minimum of sunlight, there's a couple of bioluminescent shark species. They don't take in light within their eyes, but produce or re-emit it with their bodies. Their skin or organs have specialized cells that produce a soft blue-green light. Deep-sea creatures that produce their own light do that to attract their prey, deter animals from going after them, or, scientists think, communicate with each other. It can even help them to camouflage. They do it by hiding their silhouettes from animals going after them. They produce enough light to match their surroundings. The biggest luminous underwater creature is the kitefin shark, found swimming 980 feet below sea level, preying on groundfish or smaller sharks. It can grow almost 6 feet long and lives 3,200 feet below sea level. Deep-sea sharks are also bigger than those on the surface. The Greenland shark can grow up to 24 feet long, bigger than a great white. There's a thing called deep-sea gigantism. Creatures in nutrient-poor depths of the ocean grow bigger because, that way, they lose less energy as heat. The Greenland shark lives its life in slow motion. It has a slow metabolism and can go very long periods without food. With their slow pace, they evolved to live up to 500 years at depths of 7,200 feet. Sharks in shallow waters catch their prey relying on agility and speed, but for them it's easier because there's plenty of food on the surface. Deep-sea sharks, with less food and slower life rhythm, had to develop a different style. They're more opportunistic, definitely not picky, and don't care if their future meal is alive or not. Frilled shark, another living fossil from the darkest depths, hasn't evolved much through time, and they're one of the last of their kind, with all of their relatives already gone extinct. It grows up to 7 feet long, primarily hunts on squid, and catches other sharks and fish. It looks like a dinosaur, a snake-like face, a long, smooth, thin body that moves in a serpentine way. It can propel itself with the power of its tail and curl like snakes. They don't swim in a straight line like other sharks. Cookie cutter shark grows up to 20 inches. It got the name because of the way it feeds, biting off small pieces. It's a parasite creature, which means it feeds off bigger animals but leaves them alive. They have sharp teeth and sometimes even swallow those that fall off on purpose. Some researchers think it could be because they live in the depths that are nutrient poor. If they swallow the teeth, they could recycle calcium and other material from it. Prickly shark is a rare and unusual creature with many thorn-like denticles and 2 small dorsal fins. It lives mostly in the depths of the Pacific region up to 1,900 feet. Ghost sharks are not even real sharks, but fish closely related to them and rays. They have big pectoral and pelvic fins, 2 dorsal fins, pretty big eyes, and unlike their cousins, have a single external gill opening. Ghost sharks have slender tails and can grow up to 80 inches, silver to blackish color. They sometimes live in rivers and coastal waters, but also in the depths of the ocean of 8,200 feet or even deeper. They are pretty weak swimmers, so they tend to feed on invertebrates and small fish. Goblin sharks. Swimming through the deep sea, this creepy shark with a flabby body suddenly sees a small, innocent squid. It goes toward it, but the potential snack notices it and quickly starts moving to dart away. It seems like the plan could work at first, but then the shark suddenly thrusts the jaw of its mouth and catches the poor little squid in a second. After the meal is finished, the animal simply fits the jaw back into the mouth and goes away as if nothing happened. This is possible because it has a jaw connected to 3-inch-long flaps of skin, which is why it can unfold from the snout. It can grow up to 12 feet long with a weight of 460 pounds. Scientists think goblin sharks are mostly active in the morning and evening. The shark has a long, prominent snout and specific sensing organs on it. It uses them to sense electrical fields in the dark oceanic depths. Seven-gill shark is a big cow shark, brown to silver-gray on top, white underneath, black and white spots, with a thick body, a small dorsal fin, and a wide, blunt snout. It can grow up to 10 feet long, mostly lives in the depth of 1,870 feet, but you can also find it in deep channels and bays. It can be aggressive toward humans if provoked, so don't. Like most deep-sea creatures, it's an opportunistic hunter that's not quite picky but likes to go after dolphins, seals, porpoises, and other marine animals. Megamouth sharks mostly live in the depths of 15,000 feet and spend most of their time in the dark, like me. Scientists discovered it in 1976 because it went near the surface at night to feed on zooplankton. That's the only time these sharks go there. During the day, they return to their quiet, dark, and mysterious depths. They are filter feeders, which means they keep their mouths wide open while swimming, so they filter the planktons they like to eat. There are organs that produce light inside of their mouths, which attracts potential prey, such as pelagic crustaceans. These sharks live in the deep parts of the ocean, but you can rarely find them below almost 2 miles. Scientists think some other stronger bony fishes outcompeted them. Deep parts of oceans became oxygenated around 70 million years ago, and sharks have been around way longer. But bony fishes adjusted and adapted efficient ways to use oxygen, while sharks were slow with adaptations, so they lost. Also, oceanic depths are way colder, which is challenging for fish and the rest of cold-blooded animals because the speed of their metabolism widely depends upon the external temperature.
The sea, this unrelenting water beast, has been defying all attempts to tame it for centuries. Many ships driven by the wind have gone through the harshest parts of the world. Some have survived the struggle with the sea, and many have come off second best. It's the year 1834. A ship called the Pilgrim is setting a course to sail from California to Boston. The journey will venture around South America and then past Cape Horn of Chile. Richard signs up as a merchant seaman aboard the Pilgrim. This is his first voyage at sea. The crew tells Richard stories of the Drake Passage off Cape Horn, a route that's legendary for its dangers. Countless ships and sailors have disappeared in those waters. Since Cape Horn's discovery in 1526, it's quickly become known to all those that have sailed around it as the ultimate test of any mariner's skill and of any ship's strength. Those that have survived the journey call Cape Horn a sailor's nightmare. Jack the helmsman, a salty veteran, steers the ship towards this most dangerous of all routes. Jack has been aboard the Pilgrim since it was first commissioned in 1825. He's passed by the Horn many times, each time learning a different lesson from the tests provided by the sea. The Pilgrim has been refitted since its past voyage a year ago. Richard values Jack's experience, given that it's his first journey at sea. Jack assures Richard of his confidence in the Pilgrim, even though it's just a small wooden brig with 2 masts. Jack's aware that wooden vessels are gradually becoming outdated, replaced by new steam-powered ships. But Jack prefers the maneuverability of the Pilgrim and would take it over the steel ships any day. Richard is excited to be aboard. There's so much to explore in life as a merchant seaman, but the guy struggles to acquire his sea legs on the boat. Forceful winds make the Pilgrim move faster, providing Richard with a quick introduction to life at sea. At the same time, nothing can prepare him for what is to be experienced at Cape Horn. It's the southernmost point of land before Antarctica. The gap between the icy continent and Cape Horn holds the infamous Drake Passage. Approximately 700 miles between Cape Horn and the Antarctic Peninsula. Strong winds provide an uninterrupted, steadfast journey toward the Horn. But, as Jack tells Richard, the winds are more concentrated at the Drake Passage. They create a funneling effect, becoming stronger and more unpredictable. Richard is unsure of what this might mean for the Pilgrim, but understands that there's no easier route to travel around South America. A few days pass. The Pilgrim sails by the many islands that make up the western coast of Chile. Although the sea has been relatively calm, Richard continues to deal with his lack of sea legs. His movements are still not very graceful. The constant, ever-swaying deck rises and falls, and Richard finds it hard to get used to the motion. Random large waves hit the Pilgrim from every angle. The ship is quickly approaching Cape Horn. Richard looks towards great thunderous black clouds in the distance. "Welcome to the Horn," Jack says, half laughing. A wry smile upon his face soon disappears. The man gets serious, knowing what awaits them all. Stronger winds start blowing the sails as the crew scrambles to hang onto the ropes. Richard desperately sets to adjust the aft sails, adjusting for the constant change in strong southerly winds. Jack holds firm at the helm, knowing the importance of his role. He's wary of the swell. It can build very quickly the further south they travel. It's crucial the Pilgrim doesn't venture too close to the Horn when they approach. The great darkness that was in the distance is now all around them, filling the sky in every direction. Blackened clouds throw rain and hail down at the crew as they try to resist the enraged weather. Jack is directed by the captain at the helm, changing the direction of the vessel. The temperature has dropped significantly. Barely keeping the water from his eyes, he turns toward the port side bow to provide his face a brief break from the torment of the wind. Looking out into the distance, the man sees the Horn standing alone, surrounded by mist. It's a haunting sight. He steers the Pilgrim along the face of the Horn, the distance getting shorter. The waves shrink in height since the depths become shallower, but these waves are much steeper and their angle can cause more damage to the wooden vessel. Jack's unsure how much of these waves the Pilgrim can take before the hull is breached. Richard, still posted at the aft sails, watches the water and icebergs floating by. He's unsure how large they actually are, since they're mostly hidden underwater. But he knows to alert Jack if any get too close. Just one iceberg hitting the Pilgrim will be all that the hull can withstand. Dutifully, he watches over the side and into the distance. Icebergs aren't the only thing to look out for. Rogue waves are common in these seas as well. The connecting Antarctic and Pacific Oceans, mixed with stormy weather, form waves together. This creates much larger rogue waves. Such waves have been known to reach up to 100 feet tall. They can destroy most vessels in their path. It'll surely be the end of the Pilgrim if it comes across a rogue wave. Strong currents adjust the route of the Pilgrim, as though the Horn is trying to lure the ship toward its rocky shallows. Slowly, they are getting pulled closer toward the Horn. Jack is fighting the current at the helm. Spinning the wheel, he strains his body as much as he can. Grunting, he plunges the wheel from the port side to starboard and back again. The captain keeps yelling directions. To a novice, they're extremely confusing. But Jack, a hardened veteran, continues to interpret the directions with ease, steering to readjust their course away from the Horn. The captain orders Richard to assess the hull below the decks. With the level of pounding the Drake Passage has provided so far, it's surely harmed the ship in some way. Richard runs to the deck as another sailor yells something at him, but the noise of the sea makes it difficult to hear. A wave hits the side, flowing onto the deck. Richard manages to hang on to the mast before he's almost swept overboard. The entire front deck seems to be underwater. Hanging on as the water rolls off the sides of the ship and waiting for it to clear, Richard watches the Horn slowly go past. Still, it beckons toward the Pilgrim, as though asking for its dues from the crew. The currents are still pulling the ship, while the storm is raging on, with no end of the struggle in sight. The storm is growing ever larger and fiercer. Richard gathers himself to head below and assess the damage. After a slow descent to the lower decks, Richard can finally look over the hull from the ship's quarters. There's no damage from what he can gather. But he's shocked by the depth of the water inside. It's now at waist depth. Cups, amongst other things, float in the water. Even inside the ship, the guy can't escape the waves. Unable to make sense of it all, he stands frozen, listening to the almighty power of Mother Nature outside. The sea roars even more wildly, waves constantly thudding against the hull. It sounds like a somber drumbeat, a slow countdown to the demise of the Pilgrim. Richard forces himself back to the terrors of the above decks, grasping onto the rails to carefully walk the slippery stairs. He leaves the disturbing creaks of the wooden decks. They're soon replaced with the strained sounds of the ropes, the yells of other sailors, and the deafening roar of the sea crashing all around him. Jack is at the helm, focused on his role, still fighting the wind and the waves, even with the addition of ice and frost. It seems that the world around him has set its heart to distract the man from his duty, but Jack pushes on determinedly. For 9 days, the Pilgrim fights the constant changes in stormy weather, facing all kinds of obstacles, but the ship manages to make it through. As they leave the storm behind, the crew sets their course north for their final destination. The sight of the sun peeking through the dark clouds is the most relieving thing Richard has ever experienced. Unfortunately, Richard lost his rations at some stage during the storm. At sea, if your rations are lost, it's your own bad luck. Luckily, Jack is kind enough to share some of his.
Dwarf lantern shark. Sounds kind of like a superhero, huh? This is the smallest shark in the world. It's only the size of your palm, and it can glow in the dark. Well, that's a superpower. Blue-ringed octopus. The most beautiful octopus in the world. But the bright colors of animals usually indicate they're venomous. An antidote to its venom is yet to be found. Although this little guy is the size of a TV remote. Sarcastic fringehead. Though this fish is only 12 inches long, it can eat prey much larger. Its jaw can open just like a dinosaur's. The sarcastic fringehead has been known to attempt to swallow a whole octopus. Hey, can't we all just get along? Red lionfish. This beauty has an incredible appetite. It can eat fish 2/3 the size of its body, and it hides the needles on its fins, which contain a potent venom. Striped surgeonfish. It has scalpel-sharp spikes on its fins, not to perform surgery, but to hunt. And unlike a doctor, it has venom on them. Black dragonfish. This is the only fish that can produce infrared light thanks to the chlorophyll in its eyes. It lives only at a depth of 6,600 feet, and you can only reach that depth in a special submarine. Reef stonefish. This genius of camouflage usually lies on the bottom and pretends to be a rock. Tourists can often step on it, and sharp needles on its back can easily cut even through the hard sole of a boot. Viperfish. This fish, the size of your forearm, has the largest teeth in relation to its head in the world. But you're unlikely to encounter it because it lives at a depth of 13,000 feet. Lamprey. These are parasites that stick up to other creatures and live off of them. Only these guys are 10 times bigger than the average river leech. Mega piranha. The most aggressive fish in the world, the size of a Doberman dog. A pack of these guys could leave nothing of an entire cow in just a couple of minutes. Fortunately for all of us, they ceased to exist 8 million years ago. Whew! Black pacu. Pretty ordinary big fish until it opens its mouth. It has human-like teeth, and the richest black pacu even had golden dental crowns. Just kidding. Payara. The most dangerous freshwater resident. It can swallow prey half its size. Even piranhas fear this monster. Anglerfish. It has a fishing rod on its head. It's a bait that lures small fish right into the mouth of this hunter. Slender snipe eel. It's very long and flexible due to the number of vertebrae in its back. There are 750 of them. By comparison, we only have 33 to 34 vertebrae. Barracuda. Its jaw is similar to that of a great white shark, but its trademark is speed. It would beat any Olympic swimmer at 29 miles per hour. Ocean sunfish. It's a fish the size of an adult person, and it's the heaviest bony fish in the world. Although peaceful, thank goodness, they sometimes damage the bottoms of small fishing boats. Frilled shark. Its length would allow it to successfully play basketball. It hunts with the strategy of a snake. The shark bends its body and then makes a sharp dash forward, and it has 300 teeth. Plenty of frills there. Electric eel. Its feature is its electrical organs, which can discharge 4 times as much as a normal household socket. The electric eel's shock can easily stun a large horse. Box jellyfish. It doesn't just drift in the waves near a shore like a regular jellyfish. Oh no! These guys are very fast and can even catch up with a person in the water. And their sting is hazardous. They don't look for trouble, but they're always ready to defend themselves. Goblin shark. Its snout ends in a long blade-like outgrowth, and its jaw could extend all the way to the end of the snout. It's one of the most terrifying sharks in the world, despite its tender pink color. Saltwater crocodile. This is the most bad-tempered crocodile on the planet, and one of the largest at 20 feet. They're not afraid of humans and only consider us as food. Hey, don't snack on me. Great white shark, the most notorious inhabitant of the oceans. Once, a great white shark pierced the bottom of a tourist yacht. The boat sank, but luckily no one was injured or eaten. Greenland shark. These are the real long livers of the marine world. They have a very slow metabolism and can live up to 300 years. For comparison, the oldest human was 122 years old. Giant oarfish. This fish is as long as a giant anaconda, and it holds the title of the largest bonefish in the world. Giant manta ray. This creature might look like it's smiling, but it'll rush at you without hesitation. They reach up to 16 feet in diameter and have a very sharp spike with a neurotoxin. Great. Orca. They can swim at the speed of a car and are as big as a large minivan. And they're the only sea hunters that can jump out onto the coast and grab their prey there. Dunkleosteus. This guy was the size of a limousine. Although it had no teeth, it had bony plates that gave it one of the strongest bites among sea creatures. Camaraceres. This is an ancient clam of incredible size, but 90% of its entire body was a cone shell. It was heavy, which prevented it from moving very fast. So most of the time, Camaraceres lay motionless on the bottom, waiting for small fish to swim by. Kronosaurus. It was similar to a crocodile, only several times larger. The remains of one of them contained dinosaur bones, so Kronosaurus hunted not only in the sea, but also on land. Helicoprion. One of the few species to survive the Triassic extinction event. It did so thanks to its high intelligence and a powerful fighting tool, the circular saw-shaped jaw on its nose. Elasmosaurus. Its appearance resembles a giraffe, only twice as big. And these guys were real travelers. They swallowed small rocks to grind their food. 300 rocks from all over the world were found in the remains of one of them. Colossal squid. It weighs as much as 2 polar bears and is 5 times as long as a human. They're extremely rare, but still exist far out in the cold waters of our planet. Humpback whale. Like ordinary whales, they feed on plankton and small fish, using their mouth as a huge net. They use their giant tail to stun large schools of fish. Mosasaurus. Aren't you impressed that I can say these Latin names? No? Oh well. The Mosasaurus were as big as a subway car and were the kings of the seas 66 million years ago. Their jaw and skull were snake-like, and they could swallow their prey whole. Today, we can still find their relatives, the monitor lizards. They monitor where you go. Not really. Melville's Leviathan. Now this guy had the biggest teeth ever known. They were basically as big as half your hand, and their appearance resembled something between an orca and a sperm whale. Leadsichthys. They were bigger than a school bus, but they weren't hunters. Their large size prevented them from being fast, so they fed mostly on plankton. Megalodon. Ooh, the most famous ancient sea creature. They were heavier than a tank or even a small house. Some people think they're still living in the deep waters of the ocean, but this, of course, is not true. Basilosaurus. Giant ancestors of modern whales. They had large lower limbs. Perhaps it's because they used to be land creatures, but in the course of evolution, they gradually moved into the water. Cachalot. Sounds like it should have been on a baseball team. They were almost as long as a basketball court. Their brains weighed 15 pounds. That's 7 times the weight of a human brain. Sei whale. Okay, whale. Actually, it's its name, not a command. One of the best swimmers of all whales. Sei whale could go up to 31 miles per hour and dive deeper than the height of the Empire State Building. Shastasaurus. Though only bones remain of this monster, calculations say it was as long as a tennis court or as a truck and trailer. Blue whale. The largest mammal to ever live on our planet. Its heart alone weighs as much as a big motorcycle, and its veins are as wide as a big pot. And these guys can sing songs. Lion's mane jellyfish. The world's largest jellyfish. It has a hat 7 feet wide and tentacles as long as a 10-story building. Although they're not dangerous at all, people can still get tangled in their incredible tentacles like in a net. Portuguese man-o'-war. Although its head is very small, just like an ordinary jellyfish, its tentacles are as long as half a soccer field. And these things are venomous. They paralyze fish and anything caught in them, even people. So, stay away, huh? Well, hey there! We dive back in time and into the oceans over 500 million years ago, just, because we can. Whoa! Watch out! It's not Megalodon or giant sea reptiles you need to look out for here. It's a bizarre, unearthly-looking creature called Anomalocaris. The name means unlike any other shrimp, and I think you'll agree, it looks like a nightmarish cross between a shrimp and a modern-day centipede. 2 tentacles protruding from its face, each lined with razor-sharp teeth. Oh yeah, and this thing was about the size of your leg. With a wave-like movement of the flaps on each side of its body, it was graceful for a terrifying creature. It was also more advanced than any other life on this planet at the time. Especially those huge eyes. You have only one lens in each of yours. This giant shrimp had 16,000. That's 4 times more than a common housefly. And you know how good their vision is. Good enough to dodge that swatter every time. All this allowed Annie to become one of the first animals on this planet to feed on others. Yep, here it is. Earth's first hunter. Its favorite meal? Trilobites. Hey, try a bite. Those are the ancient ancestors of crabs. Some of their fossils have marks on them in the same shape as the monster shrimp's mouthparts. Terrors of the past like this got to be so giant thanks to more oxygen in the atmosphere. A perfect example of this, Meganeuropsis. Imagine a dragonfly. Now make it as big as a cat, and with a wingspan longer than your arm. Megan, the monster-sized dragonfly, could easily grab other insects or even small animals, and she ruled the air with quick movements. Back then, there were still no large birds or other airborne enemies for this behemoth bug, so it was safe and free to grow as large as this planet would allow. Piranhas of the past were also jumbo-sized. Mega piranha was about 3 times the size of the river terrors we have today. Its bite force was about the same as a tiger's, and those striped kitties bite down 2 times harder than lions. That means it probably not only dined on other fish and any land creatures that, got too close to the water, but it could also easily crunch down on large turtles and other unlucky shelled creatures. And fun fact, modern-day piranhas bark like dogs when they're about to enter a confrontation. It actually sounds more like a frog's ribbit. But makes you wonder, what did this mega-sized ancient cousin sound like? A bear roaring? How about giant sea scorpions the size of your bed? Go back about 460 million years, and you'd see them swimming under you. And watch out for that tail. Scientists still don't know if these creatures could use it to inject venom like your standard land scorpion, but something tells me I wouldn't want that thing anywhere near me. Then there's this guy, Therizinosaurus. Terry looks sort of like a goose with long arms. Oh, and did I mention this goose dino is about 2 stories tall and longer than a bus? Yow! Its arms make the T-Rexes look even more bite-sized, each 8 feet long, almost triple the length of T-Rexes. And on the end, razor-sharp claws the size of your whole arm. Now, don't worry about those lengthy claws too much, though. Terry probably used them to cut through giant termite nests. So, this huge reptilian goose was more interested in eating bugs and plants. Another mega monster for you, Megatherium. The giant ground sloth could look a giraffe straight in the eye and weighed as much as a hippo. It moved mainly on its hind legs and used its massive tail as support. He had huge paws with colossal knife-sized claws. The sloth could use them to defend itself from enemies and to bend tree branches in search of food. But the biggest danger to the giant ground sloth wasn't dinosaurs or saber-toothed tigers. It was our own species. Yep, humans showed up just in time to meet this fellow and to, eat him up. Titanoboa was a terrifying 50-foot snake. as long as the great Megalodon itself. It was also more than 2 times heavier than the heavyweight champion among snakes today, the green anaconda. Crocodiles were a regular on this serpent's menu. Titanoboa could swim 3 times faster than the fastest Olympic swimmer our species has ever seen. It was quicker and more dangerous in the water than outside it. And don't forget the boa part of its name. This massive snake wasn't venomous. Instead, it liked to squeeze. Remember that giant shrimp from earlier? Well, Opabenia looks like its teeny-tiny finger-sized cousin. And instead of 2 toothy tentacles, this thing had a vacuum hose coming out of its face. On the end of that trunk, what looks like a single crab claw. Add 5 eyes and a mouth under its head, and you've got a recipe for something not of this planet. Only it is. This creature used its trunk like an elephant does. Its claw grabbed food from the bottom of the ocean and brought it up to its mouth. This thing is so weird-looking that, apparently, when the scientists who discovered it presented his findings to an audience, they all laughed as if he were joking. Now, a real-life monster, the Tully monster. From a distance, it looks a bit like Nessie, that long neck and teeth-lined jaws. But get closer, and you'll see it's more like a long nose with a mouth attached at the end, like a mosquito. Its eyes are further back, sticking out of tubes all snail-like. Tully was an ancient mollusk, about the size of your forearm. It probably dined on jellyfish and shrimp 300 million years ago. Thylacus smilus will put a smile on your face as long as you don't get too close. No, it's not a relative of the saber-toothed tiger. It was a marsupial, making it more related to a kangaroo than anything. And if you compare them to body size, its fangs were actually longer than a saber-toothed tiger's. And they grew continuously. As for that beard on its chin, that's actually all chin. The lower jawbone grew down to a point under the mouth. Those fangs were rooted to the skull, going way back to its eyes. When the mouth was closed, that bony beard protected the long, sharp teeth from breakage. Staganapolis, not to be confused with Minneapolis, might look like a big crocodile with a squished-in snout, but it was mostly harmless. Its small head and very few teeth meant the reptile didn't have much to work with when protecting itself. That's what all those armored scales were for, and no need for huge fangs or long rows of razor-sharp teeth when you're a plant eater. That beak-like tip on its nose allowed the stag to dig up plants. So, really, this reptile was more like a 10-foot scaly pig than a croc. Basilosaurus was a type of ancient whale that lived on our planet about 45 million years ago. Not quite as long as a blue whale, but this guy was still big enough to munch down on other whales and even sharks. Some people believe these monsters could still exist today. Eyewitnesses claim to have seen a giant sea dragon, and Basilosaurus fits the description. Plus, 90% of our oceans are unexplored. There's plenty of space to hide a sea monster. But scientists haven't found any fossils of this ancient whale younger than 3.7 million years. So, this myth is busted. Stegosaurus is one of the most recognizable dinosaurs that ever lived. It can easily be distinguished by those huge spikes on its tail and the bony plates on its back. It was twice as long as a giraffe and nearly 5 times heavier. But compared to its body size, it had the world's smallest brain. It was no larger than a dog's. Pelagornis had the largest wingspan of any bird ever discovered. It was twice the size of the largest bird today, the wandering albatross. Such huge wings made it hard for the bird to take off. It could only do so by jumping off cliffs. And when it finally spread its wings, this giant could only go about 40 miles per hour. The